Over the course of a film and television career that spanned over 30 years, Johnny Depp has played more than a few strange characters. Some have been part of his bizarre collaborative history with director Tim Burton, which has seen him become everyone from Willy Wonka to Sweeney Todd. But he's also always marched to the beat of a different drummer by himself. Though he's had a tortured relationship with fame, Johnny Depp is still a master of his craft, and an extremely interesting guy to boot. Even after spending all these years in the limelight, there's still plenty that's been left out of the headlines about the enigmatic actor and musician. This is the untold truth of Johnny Depp. Auspicious start. There's a long-standing Hollywood rumor that Johnny Depp first got his start after his first wife introduced him to her ex-boyfriend, who just so happened to be Nicolas Cage, and Depp has somewhat corroborated the story in his own words.
And somebody said, well, why don't you go meet an agent, my agent, it was Nick Cage, and he said, go meet my agent, and she sent me to audition for something, and I got it.
Cage reportedly saw something in Depp and opened some crucial early career doors for him. Soon after, he was cast in his first film role in A Nightmare on Elm Street, and with that, he was officially an actor. Making movie magic. Thanks to projects like Platoon, Cry Baby, 21 Jump Street, and Edward Scissorhands, Johnny Depp started to boast some clout in Tinseltown in the early 90s. The film he decided to cash his chips in on was What's Eating Gilbert Grape. So the story goes, then-girlfriend Winona Ryder read Peter Hedges' novel of the same name and got Depp to read it too. He felt it was a modern-day Catcher in the Rye and identified strongly with Gilbert, a young man trapped in a small town and saddled with family responsibilities.
It was a residue, that was sort of left over from my childhood that I connected to and, with that character and with those people.
Depp then told director Lasse Hallström about the book, and the two agreed to work on the film before there was even a script in place. Hallström enlisted the author Hedges to work on the script, and the rest was movie history. Sticking to music. When Johnny Depp first came to California, he actually didn't intend to be an actor. He was actually in a band called The Kids, who'd been pretty successful around the greater Southeast. Depp actually dropped out of high school because of the band, and they opened for national acts like the Talking Heads, the Pretenders, and the Ramones. After the band split up, he turned to acting. But Depp never forgot his love for music and was in the glam band Rock City Angels before making his screen breakthrough. Depp later started the band P with Butthole Surfers frontman Gibby Haynes. Although they broke up fairly quickly, he remained musically active. Most recently, he's been in a band called the Hollywood Vampires alongside Alice Cooper, Aerosmith guitarist Joe Perry, and Guns N' Roses vets Duff McKagan and Matt Sorum. The members say they've all had brushes with death, and Depp in particular seems to feel lucky to be part of the collaboration. Kid-friendly. By portraying Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Johnny Depp got to bring a lot of joy to children, both in and outside of the theaters. He spent a great deal of his free time suiting up in the character costume to visit children's hospitals and schools. And the reason for his particular fondness for children has a little something to do with his own experiences as a father.
They're giving me the gift. I was the parent when my daughter was ill, and I've known darkness in my life, but that was the darkest period ever,
Of course, Jack Sparrow isn't the only character he has embodied to bring joy to his youngest fans. In 2016, he acted in The Black Gondola, a micro-budgeted movie about a young man who, in the wake of a zombie apocalypse, risks everything to save the life of his companion. The short movie came together thanks to the Make a Film Foundation, a charity which helps filmmaking dreams come true for kids and teens with serious medical problems. The film was written by and starred Anthony Conti, a 16-year-old who is stricken with stage 4 adrenal cortical cancer, and Depp happily joined in as one of the film's supporting A-listers. Cinematic chameleon. Johnny Depp has tried on so many different screen personas that it's entirely possible that even he doesn't know what he looks or sounds like anymore. Even in interviews, he tends to talk with affectations that sound like they're somewhere between Great Britain, Boston, and Wonderland. And he also seems to enjoy disappearing into his roles.
Well, the last thing I want to look like is myself, I've always felt that it was important to escape.
So if you ever wondered why he tends to choose roles that make him virtually unrecognizable, it's because he seems to prefer on-screen anonymity. Even still, he refuses to watch his own movies anyway.
I've seen only a couple that I've had to see, like for just to check for, the cut or whatever, to make sure that the cut was cool.
Getting political. In addition to making movies and music, Depp has also been known to use his platform to raise awareness for political causes. Alongside several other socially conscious artists, Depp participated in the Voice Project's Imprisoned for Art campaign in late 2016. appearing in a mugshot to shed light on a Ukrainian filmmaker serving a 20-year jail sentence in Siberia. Depp is also no fan of Donald Trump and appeared in a Funny or Die Lost movie called The Art of the Deal, based on the Trump book by the same name. The movie was posted the morning Trump won the New Hampshire primary, but Depp continued to whip out his spot-on impressions on command.
Well, I got a feel for him because he's sensational. Absolutely fabulous. I told them to build me that wall. I want a sensational wall.
If Alec Baldwin ever decides to stop impersonating the president on Saturday Night Live, it looks like Johnny Depp could fit right into it. Personal problems. As much as he might like to sink into his screen roles in recent years, Johnny Depp's personal life has become a very publicized roller coaster. He and former wife Amber Heard caused something of an international incident in 2015 when they traveled to Australia to film the latest Pirates installment and brought along their 2 Yorkshire Terriers. Upon arrival, the couple failed to properly declare the animals with customs officials.
Mr. Depp has to either take his dogs back to California or we're going to have to euthanize them.
They were forced to return the smuggled animals to the United States, and Heard pleaded guilty to knowingly producing a false or misleading document for failing to disclose the dogs. The two ended up delivering an awkward apology video, which he was later able to laugh about.
I would really like to apologize for not smuggling my dogs.
But that was just the start of their problems. Their marriage soon after ended in disaster as the actress claims that he'd been abusive to her during their relationship. She also alleged that Depp was addicted to alcohol and other substances. Though their divorce was finalized relatively quickly, Depp's days of making headlines for all the wrong reasons were far from over. Financial woes. With over $50 million worth of property in one of Hollywood's most interesting resumes to his name, it was a bit shocking to learn that Johnny Depp has major money problems. Shortly after his split from Heard, Depp's legal woes raged on after his attorney and accountant informed him that he was financially underwater. The two reportedly had to make Depp understand that his income was being outpaced by his spending on luxuries like art, jewelry, wine, property, and the $3.6 million per year he paid his personal staff. Depp finally agreed to sell his yacht, but it was the start of a tense communication between the three that would end with Depp firing both of his advisors. Depp went on to allege that his former managers caused him to rack up more than $40 million in debt and to dispose of valuable assets, and that they talked him into high-interest loans that they didn't make payments on. They responded by claiming that Depp was irresponsible, prompting legal actions on both sides. In January 2017, Depp filed suit against the management group for mismanagement of his wealth and for defrauding him out of money during the course of their duties between 1999 and 2016. Depp claimed that the company siphoned some $28 million and that they didn't pay his taxes on time. TMG countersued. If all of that wasn't bad enough, he's also been sued by his former bodyguards for unpaid wages and unsafe work conditions. Thin but okay. Johnny Depp appeared in 2 major films in 2017, Murder on the Orient Express and Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales, and lined up a few more for 2018, including the Fantastic Beasts sequel, The Crimes of Grindelwald. Depp looked mostly like his youthful self in those films, which was why fans were shocked when an odd picture of the actor circulated around the internet in spring 2018, where he's posing with a fan in Russia, looking ghostly pale and skeletally thin. While Depp often drastically alters his appearance for films, the sudden physical transformation still proved alarming, leaving fans wondering why Depp was looking so skinny, blaming everything from drug addiction to preparing for a movie role. As it happens, it's probably for a film. Depp is set to star in a dramedy called Richard Says Goodbye as a professor dying of a terminal illness. Depp obviously still has no trouble scoring promising projects, even now.
Working lunch. I'm on a roll.
The man known as Jackie Chan is one of the biggest and most badass movie stars ever, and the first to bridge the gap between Hong Kong action cinema and big-budget American movies. Chan might be past 60, but he's still putting his life on the line to thrill audiences. Read the womb. Though it may seem like the big screen legend has been around forever, Jackie Chan was born Chan Kong Sang in April 1954. There's nothing weird about that until you realize he was supposed to be born in January of that year. Yup, he hung out in his mother's womb for a full 12 months before a British doctor had to surgically remove him. At the time of his forced birth, he weighed 12 pounds. His mother nicknamed him Pow Pow, or Cannonball.
My wife had such a difficult time delivering him. Afterwards, she was totally exhausted. The nurse brought the baby in saying, "Oh, he's so cute, just like a cannonball."
Nevertheless, that kind of medical procedure isn't cheap, and Chan's parents couldn't afford it. Thus, they tried to sell their baby to the doctor who delivered him. The doctor said no, obviously. According to Chan's memoir, his parents gathered the money from their friends and needed a decade to pay them all back. Learning from legends. When Jackie Chan was 7 years old, he was enrolled and boarded at the China Drama Academy, where he was taught acting and singing in preparation for a career in the Peking Opera. It was there Chan lived and trained for the next 10 years, eventually forming an acrobatic troupe with some classmates called the Seven Little Fortunes. Upon leaving school, Chan used the group to gain his first roles in Hong Kong movies. He and the Seven Little Fortunes were extras and stuntmen in Enter the Dragon and Fists of Fury, two of the most famous and popular movies ever made by Bruce Lee. Chan even got to spar on camera with the screen legend.
Suddenly, my eyes all black because he just one stick right on my head.
Picky with voice parts. While a star in Asia since the 1970s, Jackie Chan wasn't a mainstream star in the US until the release of Rumble in the Bronx in 1996. Before that, he helped bring American movies to Asia. For example, he provided the Mandarin language voice acting of the Beast for the Chinese dub of Beauty and the Beast. Chan has since done voice work in the English language releases of other major animated movies, one notable example being his portrayal of Master Monkey in the Kung Fu Panda movies. However, you might be surprised to hear of the one place he didn't lend his voice, the cartoon series Jackie Chan Adventures. Although he appeared in live-action bumpers for the show, the cartoon version of Jackie Chan is voiced by James C.,
but I don't know anything about children,
who also, incidentally, took over as Master Monkey in the TV series spin-off of Kung Fu Panda. To make things even more confusing, the character of Jade Chan, Jackie's fictional niece on the series, was voiced by Stacy Chan, Jackie Chan's real-life niece. No stranger to danger. After starring in dozens of martial arts and action movies in which he's done his own stunts, Jackie Chan has sustained a number of injuries. So much so that in 2013, his movie Chinese Zodiac was promoted in Japan with a poster that consisted of an image of Chan's body with arrows pointing to all of his injured body parts. Among the injuries Chan has suffered in The Pursuit of Entertainment, on Drunken Master, he damaged a bone behind his eyebrow, and it nearly blinded him. On City Hunter, he dislocated his right shoulder. On The Armor of God, Chan fell out of a tree and suffered a skull fracture, a bone cave-in behind the ear, and bleeding into his brain. During surgery, bone chips were removed from his head.
Two fingers.
Two fingers?
Yeah.
Take these two fingers. I'm bowling with Jackie Chan. Oh my God, yes, 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 yes!
He broke his breastbone on Armor of God 2. During the filming of The Accidental Spy, he broke his tailbone and was temporarily paralyzed. Oh, and he's broken his nose 4 separate times. Once while making The Young Master, once on Project A, once on Miracles, and once on Mr. Nice Guy. Ouch. We'll never complain about a stubbed toe again.
Broken, teeth gone, jaws, cheek, broken, crack.
The 1000th time's a charm. Directors may require a lot to get a scene the way they want it. In one example of this borderline abusive practice, Stanley Kubrick infamously required Shelley Duvall to film one scene in The Shining 127 times. By that logic, the most sadistic director that Jackie Chan has ever worked with is himself. While directing and starring in the 1982 movie Dragon Lord, a sequence in which characters play Jianzi, a Chinese sport similar to hacky sack but with a weighted badminton-style shuttlecock, just didn't look right to director Chan. It's been reported that the scene took 2,900 takes, but it probably didn't take that many. The book Kung Fu Masters places the number over 190, and other estimates come in at over 1,000. Either way, Chan was dedicated to the shot. Tough love. Jackie Chan's a movie star, which means he's rich. He's amassed a fortune of over $350 million. In addition to earning salary and box office percentages from his films, he's owned a chain of movie theaters and a Segway dealership. And when he dies, a lot of it is going to charity. But his son, JC Chan, who was convicted on drug charges in 2015, stands to inherit exactly none of that. In 2011, Chan publicly mentioned that he won't leave his fortune behind to his son, remarking, "If he is capable, he can make his own money. If he is not, then he will be just wasting my money." It seems like there's a little more to the story than that, especially considering the fact that their relationship isn't without its past bumps in the road. Jackie once even admitted that he had beaten JC when he was a child, admitting that he was not a model father. But it looks like threats of violence are off the table these days.
Wearing the white shoes, running around, because he don't wash his own shoes. Socks.
You give him a shot?
No, I can't. He sue me.
Polarizing politics. While Jackie Chan boasts fans from every corner of the globe, he's still very loyal to his home nation of China's political system of communism. In fact, he's way more politically outspoken than most of his fans probably realize. He's even opened up about his opinions on the American way of life on more than one occasion. In 2013, he said, "What I can see is China continuously making progress and learning. If you talk about corruption, the entire world, the United States has no corruption. It's the most corrupt in the world." But his opinions don't end with the US. In 2009, he talked about the dangers of too much freedom in China-controlled Taiwan, saying, "I don't know whether it's better to have freedom or to have no freedom. With too much freedom, it gets very chaotic. It could end up like in Taiwan. Chinese people need to be controlled, otherwise they will do whatever they want." Whether you agree or disagree with Chan's beliefs, one thing's for certain. He knows how to get pulses racing no matter where his fans fall on the political spectrum.
From embodying country music icon Johnny Cash in Walk the Line down to his distinctive singing voice, to the vicious sadism of the Emperor in Gladiator, Joaquin Phoenix has proven that his range is virtually unmatched. But his rise to fame was neither assured nor straightforward. Born Joaquin Rafael Bottom on October 28, 1974 in Puerto Rico, Phoenix had nomadic early years as his parents were members of the Children of God Christian Missionary Group, now classified as a cult. Because of their involvement in that organization, the Bottoms traveled all over South and Central America, until the cult's increasingly sinister practices, including alleged sexual abuse and incest, began to disenchant Joaquin's parents. After escaping Children of God and returning to the U.S. with their 5 kids in tow, the Bottoms eventually settled in Los Angeles. They changed their last name from Bottom to Phoenix, and Joaquin also decided to go by the first name Leaf, so he could better match with his brother River and their sisters Summer, Rain, and Liberty. The Phoenix kids played music on the streets for rent money until their mom, Arlen, aka Hart, got a job as a secretary to an NBC casting agent. Through her networking, a well-known casting agent was won over by the family's talent and shepherded them into the bright lights of Hollywood. Joaquin Phoenix went by his chosen name Leaf for the first few years of his acting career, but it was actually his brother who snagged the first screen role in the television series 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. River quickly brought his family along. Joaquin had his first TV role on that show too, immediately followed by a string of small roles on TV. As River's star began to rise in movies with his breakout in Stand By Me, Joaquin also landed juicy lead roles in Space Camp in 1986 and Ruskies in 1987.
Stay put for the next hour or so, nobody will get hurt.
Joaquin's first truly big break wouldn't come until 1989 with the Steve Martin family dramedy Parenthood, as troubled youngster Gary, a boy struggling with his father's abandonment of his family. The film was a hit, and Phoenix was nominated for a Young Artist Award for Best Leading Young Actor for this nuanced and heartbreaking performance.
You didn't think it was such a good idea. Oh, sweetie. I gotta go.
But just as Joaquin was set to follow in his brother's successful footsteps, another tragedy hit his family that prevented him from acting for almost 2 years. On Halloween night in 1993, Joaquin Phoenix was at Hollywood nightclub The Viper Room when his brother River overdosed on a cocktail of drugs. Joaquin was the one who called 911 while their sister Rain tried to resuscitate River using CPR. River later died at the hospital, a trauma that impacted Joaquin and the Phoenix family immeasurably. Joaquin was only 19. His brother had recently turned 23. Joaquin Phoenix was so devastated by his brother's sudden death that he didn't act for almost 2 years. By this time, Joaquin's parents had split up and his father John had moved back to South America. While Joaquin's mom and sisters retreated to their family property in Florida and the safety of their connection and privacy to mourn and heal, Joaquin went to live and travel with his father instead. Joaquin Phoenix was hit extremely hard losing his brother River, but when he came back to acting, he did so with a vengeance. He decided to return to his given name Joaquin instead of Leaf, seen for the first time in the credits of Gus Van Sant's critically acclaimed film To Die For, which kickstarted a fierce new chapter of Phoenix's career in 1995.
Now, I take it very serious.
After the success of To Die For, Phoenix went on to work with Oliver Stone on U-Turn, then went on to the romantic drama Inventing the Abbotts and the thrillers Clay Pigeons and 8mm. But it wasn't until Ridley Scott's Gladiator that Phoenix's talents brought him his first Oscar nomination for his layered performance as Emperor Commodus. By the time he worked with M. Night Shyamalan on Signs and The Village, Phoenix had become a full-fledged movie star. While Joaquin Phoenix's earlier roles were each marked with singular iterations of Phoenix's profound emotional depth, he took things to a new level with his method acting in Walk the Line in 2005, embodying Johnny Cash down to his singing voice, and earning a Grammy as well as a Golden Globe for his tremendous work. Diving deep emotionally and physically to embody Johnny Cash and the addictions that shaped his life and career would also come with a dark side for Joaquin Phoenix. After filming for Walk the Line Wrapped, he checked himself into rehab for a brief stint. Phoenix had never been more than a social drinker before Walk the Line and had increased his alcohol consumption significantly to better understand Cash. As he told London Magazine, "I was really leaning on alcohol to feel okay. That's really what it was." During this difficult time, Phoenix also had a terrifying brush with death when his brakes failed and his car crashed. Amazingly, he was rescued by documentary filmmaker Werner Herzog, and nobody was badly injured. From 2009 to 2010, the public at large was worried about Joaquin Phoenix, wondering if he was on drugs or worse, when he announced his retirement from acting to become a rapper. This period was marked with Phoenix behaving erratically in interviews and talk shows like his now famous David Letterman appearance, all of which would turn out to be an elaborate piece of performance art directed by Phoenix's then brother-in-law Casey Affleck that was eventually turned into the mockumentary I'm Still Here.
These guys have seen the worst of me, they've seen the best, they've seen the honest me.
After this odd detour, Phoenix went on to stun audiences and critics with his role as Freddie Quell in Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, which earned him his third Oscar nomination. He also starred in Spike Jonze's strangely poignant tech-oriented dramedy Her, as a lonely man who falls in love with his computer operating system, to name just one standout role he's had in his post-performance art years. Riding a wave of critical acclaim for his performance in the comics-inspired 2019 drama Joker, Joaquin Phoenix received the Toronto International Film Festival Tribute Actor Award alongside Meryl Streep. The award recognizes decades of cinematic excellence, and during his acceptance speech, Joaquin made rare and emotional comments about his late brother River, saying, "When I was 15 or 16, my brother River came home from work and he had a VHS copy of a movie called Raging Bull, and he sat me down and made me watch it. And the next day he woke me up and he made me watch it again, and he said, 'You're going to start acting again. This is what you're going to do.' He didn't ask me, he told me, and I'm indebted to him for that, because acting has given me such an incredible life." Phoenix also credited his father John for gifting him with an exceptional work ethic that helped get him to this point, but also quipped that it might not have been fully on display on the Joker set.
Even after years in the spotlight, there's still a lot of mystery to Sacha Baron Cohen, and much about the comic many casual viewers wouldn't know. Here's a look at some of the most interesting and least known bits and pieces about Baron Cohen's life. Baron Cohen wanted to be a performer since childhood, having been mostly influenced by actor and comedian Peter Sellers. Baron Cohen told The Guardian he was this incredibly realistic actor who was also hilarious and who managed to bridge the gap between comedy and satire. It's an easy influence to understand. Sellers, who claimed he had no personality outside his characters, wouldn't just act his roles, he'd become them.
Sir, I have a plan. Monsieur! I can walk!
When he was 12, Baron Cohen formed a breakdancing troupe specifically so they could perform at his bar mitzvah. During his teenage years, he wrote and performed many sketches as part of a youth group, including one with his brothers, the Schwitzing Brothers. Baron Cohen described the sketch on the podcast WTF with Mark Maron, saying, "It was about how these Hasidic Jews get so hot that they end up shaving their beards and taking their clothes off and actually converting to Christianity at the end. And it would go down terribly. I mean, these old age homes would hate it." In college, Baron Cohen joined Footlights, Cambridge University's theater club. After graduating, he gave himself 5 years to make it as a performer and spent some time working for small TV stations, where he developed a character who'd later become Ali G. While he doesn't consider himself particularly religious, Baron Cohen's Jewish identity is a large part of his limited public persona. He keeps Shabbat when he can, not working Friday evening through Saturday evening, and attends synagogue a few times a year. He also keeps kosher whenever possible, once grilling a waiter about an appetizer during a Rolling Stone interview to make sure there was no shellfish or pork. His Jewish identity goes beyond traditional observances. Baron Cohen worked at a kibbutz in northern Israel during a gap year before university. He wrote his undergraduate thesis on the alliance between black groups and Jewish people during the civil rights movement, traveling America and using the ADL's archives to complete his research. He also speaks fluent Hebrew, the language he actually uses when playing Borat. Yes, that's right, a famously anti-Semitic character is speaking Hebrew.
High five!
Borat isn't just a funny character. Baron Cohen sees him as a means to an end. He's not just showing that people have intolerant views, he's showing that many are indifferent, a far more dangerous trait. This is best illustrated by the Ali G Show's most infamous segment, Borat singing the song, "In My Country There Is Problem," at a bar in Tucson, Arizona. By the end of the song, most of the bar is clapping and cheering. Baron Cohen told Rolling Stone, Borat essentially works as a tool. By himself being anti-Semitic, he lets people lower their guard and expose their own prejudice, whether it's anti-Semitism or an acceptance of anti-Semitism.
What is the best gun to defend from a Jew?
I would recommend either a 9mm or a .45.
He recognized that the "In My Country There Is Problem" sketch was controversial, but that helped prove his point. To me, it revealed something about that bar in Tucson, and the question is, did it reveal that they were anti-Semitic? Perhaps, but maybe it just revealed that they were indifferent to anti-Semitism. This assertion was reinforced when The Forward reached out to the Country West manager, who said, "The only thing we were told was that he was from Kakakakistan or something." The bar supervisor told Tucson Weekly that she wasn't worried, saying, "You see worse things on TV, and there are bigger issues to address." It's easy to divide Sacha Baron Cohen's career into pre-Borat and post-Borat, but that misses a more specific milestone. By his own estimation, winning the Golden Globe for Borat was the moment his career changed. Baron Cohen was given the award over heavy hitters and established actors like Johnny Depp and Aaron Eckhart. He then spent almost his entire speech talking about the movie's infamous naked fight scene, likely the only time the phrase anus and testicles were said at the Golden Globes. But even though he made a joke out of the victory, for him it was no joke. Baron Cohen told the Toronto Star that winning, quote, broke me out from being just a pure comedian into something larger. The award was proof positive that there was a performance behind Borat. It helped spearhead a serious acting career that saw Baron Cohen work with Martin Scorsese and Tim Burton not long after donning the gray suit. One of the first real prestigious roles Baron Cohen took on post-Borat was Station Inspector Gustav in Martin Scorsese's Hugo. After working largely in comedy, Baron Cohen didn't know what to expect, telling Georgia Strait, "I expected him to be an auteur, and he is, but I think that part of his power and the reason why his films are so successful is that he is ready to collaborate fully with his actors." The two men worked together on fleshing out Gustav. The script originally just mentioned that Gustav had a fixation with catching children and sending them to the orphanage, but Baron Cohen wanted to find a motive for these actions and pitched that he might be a war veteran.
You see, I was injured in the war and it will never heal. Good evening, mademoiselle.
Baron Cohen pitched several scenes himself as well, including the one when his character takes a bath with a dog. He said of Scorsese, he was totally ready to try out any idea, however ludicrous the suggestion, which was worrying to the producers. Baron Cohen attended the 2012 Oscars red carpet in character as Admiral General Aladdin to promote The Dictator. He carried around an urn that he claimed contained the ashes of Kim Jong-il. In a moment that made headlines around the world, he then spilled the ashes on Ryan Seacrest during an interview before being escorted away. What's less known about that moment?
Do you think that I'm lucky? Is this a vision of luck?
Seacrest wasn't the original target. The E! correspondent gave more insight into the incident on his radio show later that year, saying he ran into Baron Cohen's wife, Isla Fisher, backstage at Saturday Night Live, and she apologized for her husband. Baron Cohen was doing a walk-on cameo as Aladdin for a Weekend Update segment, and as soon as the segment was over, he ran over to Seacrest and broke character to apologize. Seacrest explained, originally he said that they were going to spill whatever it was in that urn on George Clooney. Someone decided that wasn't a great idea because he was up for a lot of nominations. It was a big night that night. Then they somehow spun the wheel of tragedy and landed on my name.
He was either going to do that to me or George Clooney, right?
Rami Malek's Oscar-winning turn as Freddie Mercury has led many to forget that Sacha Baron Cohen was attached to star in a Queen biopic for years. Between Baron Cohen's ability to get lost in a role and Borat's Mercury-esque mustache, the casting almost made too much sense. He signed on around 2010 and departed in 2013 after he and the surviving members of Queen couldn't agree on the movie's direction. Band members suggested that Baron Cohen was either too recognizable or they had worries the movie would become a joke. 3 years later, both sides aired more specific grievances in detail publicly. During an interview with Howard Stern in March of 2016, Baron Cohen claimed that an unnamed member of Queen said Freddie would die halfway through the movie. The second half would be, quote, seeing how the band carries on from strength to strength.
Not one person is going to see a movie where the lead character dies from 8 and then you carry on.
Freddie, in his estimation, had too many amazing and often obscene stories to die off mid-movie, but Queen, quote, wanted to protect their legacy as a band. Brian May responded via an interview with Daily Mail a month later. He accused Baron Cohen of lying to the press, denying that they wanted to, quote, sugarcoat the band's history, and said, we decided he wasn't right for the role for very good reasons, which will become apparent if you watch what he's done recently.
Guys, we've got to carry on.
No character in Baron Cohen's Showtime series Who is America was darker than Gio Monaldo, a billionaire playboy who dove into the most vile parts of society. He managed to get a lot of awful people to agree to awful things. Baron Cohen revealed to Deadline, however, that there was one interview that went too far, even for him. Baron Cohen wanted to find out how guys like Harvey Weinstein got away with criminal behavior. As Gio, he interviewed a Las Vegas concierge who claimed to have worked for billionaires and politicians. During the interview, Gio implied that he had molested an 8-year-old boy and fully expected the concierge to walk out. Instead, he stayed and offered to put Gio in touch with a lawyer who could silence the boy. The interview ended darker still. Gio asked for a date to be arranged with a boy, and the concierge said he had a contact who could do it. The production team immediately handed the footage over to the FBI, given that they might have just uncovered a child sex trafficking ring in Las Vegas. Despite the outrageous nature of the footage, Baron Cohen had seen more than enough and decided not to include it in the series, saying it was too dark and wrong. In a journalistic way, it was fascinating, but it was so extreme and so dark that it was too unsettling for the audience. Baron Cohen often gets sued over his work, but the suits almost never succeed. Anyone interviewed, famous or layman, sign legal releases that prevent them from bringing claims against the producers. Even if the interview itself is deceptive, the target has ample opportunity to review the release. Public figures have even more of an uphill battle. The burden of proof for defamation is much higher for the already famous, and famous people can't exactly defame themselves. Even lawsuits for fraud are likely to backfire. As entertainment lawyer John Rosenberg told the New York Times, "If I come on to a television show believing that it's a serious, political, issues-oriented format instead of this sort of satirical presentation, and I make a racist or misogynistic comment, Sacha Baron Cohen didn't defraud me into making that statement."
Are women your slaves in Russia?
No. Do you have slaves here?
We
no
wish.
slaves. No
we
slaves.
wish.
There was, however, one case when Baron Cohen's camp was in the wrong. In Bruno, the title character interviews Ayman Abu Aita, a Palestinian man labeled as a leader of militia group Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades. This was a lie. Abu Aita is a Christian Palestinian, a grocer by trade, a non-violent activist by choice, and has no association with any paramilitary groups. Abu Aita sued seeking damages, and unlike everyone else, had a case. Bruno never used Abu Aita's own words against him and labeled him incorrectly without his consent. The suit was later settled to the mutual satisfaction of all parties. Baron Cohen introduced Jojo Rabbit at the 2020 Golden Globes by saying, "The hero of this next movie is a naive, misguided child who spreads Nazi propaganda and only has imaginary friends. His name is Mark Zuckerberg." After some shocked laughs, he joked that was the leftover intro to The Social Network. This made headlines, but is only the tip of the iceberg with regard to Baron Cohen's battle against social media and its complicity in spreading fake information. Baron Cohen has long called for greater government regulation of social media. The most prominent example of this was his acceptance speech after being given the ADL's International Leadership Award in November of 2019. He spoke about the dangerous indifference of Facebook, Google, Alphabet, YouTube, and Twitter. the 6 main owners of which he named the Silicon Six. He broke down in detail how just a handful of companies have become, quote, the greatest propaganda machine in history, and said, its entire business model relies on generating more engagement, and nothing generates more engagement than lies, fear, and outrage. Baron Cohen saved most of his ire for Zuckerberg, who'd spoken out against regulation of social media the previous month and said that while he found Holocaust denial disgusting, he wouldn't remove it from Facebook because people get things wrong. It's like we're living in the Roman Empire and Mark Zuckerberg is Caesar. At least that would explain his haircut. Baron Cohen was so serious about this that he later got the speech published in the Washington Post. Sacha Baron Cohen makes much of his living by irritating people, which means that he's put in a lot of dangerous situations. The MMA scene at the end of Bruno saw a crowd yell slurs and throw chairs at him, and he only survived the incident by escaping through a trap door. The rodeo scene in Borat was even more hostile than depicted in the film. A contemporaneous report from the Roanoke Times claims that the booing was so loud that the front office staff could hear it. A rodeo producer realized the situation was a hoax of some sort, so he escorted everyone out and advised them to leave before a riot started. A setup in Who is America saw Baron Cohen pitch the largest mosque outside the Middle East to a racist crowd in Kingman, Arizona. Baron Cohen outlined 3 precautions. Audiences had to check weapons, a bodyguard was on site, and Baron Cohen himself was given a bulletproof clipboard. The production of Borat's subsequent movie film was his most dangerous yet, and not just because of the pandemic. He wrote in Time that he wore a bulletproof vest while performing at a 3%er rally. He rushed to his getaway car after organizers stormed the stage, only to have his car surrounded and the door pulled open before he escaped.
You really give 100 and maybe even 30% for these films. I mean, it is...
Yeah, I have probably a mental problem.
On May 21st, 2023, Ray Stevenson died at the age of 58. The news rocked the entertainment industry. In celebration of the actor's career and life, let's take a look back at the late Ray Stevenson. When the shocking news of Ray Stevenson's death was announced, many of his co-stars and friends took to social media, where they posted heartfelt tributes to the Northern Irish actor. On Instagram, Ahsoka star Rosario Dawson shared several photos of her with Stevenson on set, writing, "A giant of a man, stunned and reeling from this tragic, devastating news. Gone too soon from this world. At a loss for words. Just wanted to mark this moment and share your ever-ready and present smile. Love you forever." Stevenson was a complex and unconventional action hero whose path to movie and TV stardom was anything but ordinary. That being said, he always exhibited enthusiasm and appreciation for his work, the process, and what he ultimately achieved. And he was quick to share the credit with everyone, in front of the camera and behind the scenes, who'd been a part of his acting journey. Ask any actor who their favorite performer is, and there will usually be several answers. Don't be surprised, though, if more than half the responses feature the names of acclaimed leading men like Marlon Brando, Clark Gable, and Paul Newman. As an actor cut from a different cloth, Ray Stevenson looked at a different set of thespians as inspiration, telling backstage, "It was the likes of Lee Marvin, Gene Hackman. Never a bad performance, and brave and fearless within that caliber. It was never the young, hot leading man. It was men who I could identify with." While impressed by Marvin and Hackman's work, the actor stressed that it was a combination of other elements which helped these actors shine on screen. Stevenson believed actors excel as performers when the right creative talent in other parts of the production is supportive and provides the necessary tools for success. To quote the horrid and cheesy corporate-approved term, teamwork makes the dream work. From a notorious swashbuckling historical pirate to Marvel's most infamous gun-toting vigilante, Ray Stevenson brought a litany of characters to life in his storied career.
Either you are unkillable or way overdue.
However, like most actors, he had a white whale, the dream part he chased but never quite caught. In a 2008 Collider interview, Stevenson admitted his love for a certain Shakespearean play, saying, "I've always been intrigued by Coriolanus. It's potentially one of the most potent and revealing scripts. I love the play. I'd love to do that as a movie one day." A film adaptation of Coriolanus did arrive in 2011. Ray Fiennes directed, produced, and starred in the movie that received near-universal acclaim. Unfortunately, Stevenson wasn't a part of the blockbuster cast, which included the likes of Gerard Butler, Vanessa Redgrave, Jessica Chastain, and Brian Cox. Ray Stevenson's most punishing role was in Lexi Alexander's Punisher Warzone. Released in 2008, this reboot boasts blood, guts, and more R-rated violence than the average superhero movie. Stevenson dazzles as Frank Castle, embodying the vigilante from the brutal Punisher comic book series.
See you in hell. I see you anywhere near hell, I'll kick your ass up.
Unfortunately, Punisher Warzone neither lit up the box office nor inspired critics to get skull tattoos on their biceps. But despite the film's underwhelming financial and critical performance, it eventually became a cult classic. In a chat with Stevenson for the Action Elite, writer David J. Moore expressed his dismay that the actor never had a chance to return to the role of Castle. Stevenson agreed, saying, "So was I. Write in and tell them that. I would in a heartbeat go back. I love the storyline and the comic books that it was based on. It could definitely do with a sequel." Sadly, this never happened as Netflix rebooted Punisher as a series, with Walking Dead star Jon Bernthal as the titular character. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU, kickstarted in May 2008 with the release of Jon Favreau's Iron Man. While not considered a part of the official MCU, Punisher Warzone arrived that December. Considering Frank Castle's significance in the greater Marvel Universe, Ray Stevenson found himself in an odd situation. Would his character eventually be incorporated into the MCU, or would he be cast in a different role in the franchise? The latter seemed highly unlikely until Kenneth Branagh's 2011 movie Thor, in which Stevenson debuted as Volstagg, a member of Asgard's Warriors 3 team. In an interview with the AV Club, Stevenson expressed surprise at the way events unfolded, saying, "What a great privilege for Marvel, because they have kind of an unwritten rule that once you play one of their major protagonists or characters, in order to maintain a certain degree of integrity for their audience, you don't get to do it again." While not a major role like the Punisher, Volstagg appears in the first 3 Thor films, played by Stevenson each time. As one of the most popular TV shows of all time, HBO's Game of Thrones changed the lives of its cast members, making them household names. But no one predicted the epic fantasy series' game-changing success when it first began production. Consequently, many actors turned down roles on the show, and Ray Stevenson was one of them. In 2015, Stevenson revealed to Movie.com that he had the opportunity to join the Game of Thrones cast but turned it down, admitting, "The show was already too far down the line for me. I would rather have been involved in the growth of a show, even though everyone gets bumped off left, right, and center." Stevenson didn't disclose the role he was offered so as not to take away from the actor who ultimately played the part. He did say it would have kept him busy from anywhere from 4 to 6 months, but he'd already agreed to play Blackbeard on Starz' Black Sails. In showbiz, actors and directors receive all the praise when action scenes go full throttle. However, stunt performers are the unheralded heroes of cinema. It's the stunt doubles who perform the death-defying, dangerous sequences that make a movie and its actors look good for the audience. Stevenson made a lot of action films and worked with many stunt specialists across his various projects. Speaking to ComingSoon.net, he praised the Daredevils for putting their bodies on the line, singling out Rob Mars, who doubled for him in several movies. Stevenson also discussed the process of working with his stunt doubles, peeling back the curtain of movie magic to explain how the transition between actor and double occurs. He explained, "When you have a stunt man and this is his discipline, you go right up to the stunt itself and then act during the stunt, so you have this overlap, and I involved them in my process." The Northern Irish-born star expressed a high level of respect for what stunt teams do, adding that he developed personal friendships with many of them over the years. John M. Chu's G.I. Joe Retaliation hit the big screen in 2013. While billed as the sequel to 2009's G.I. Joe The Rise of Cobra, the film largely focuses on a new group of heroes, led by Dwayne Johnson's Roadblock. In the opposite corner stands Ray Stevenson as Firefly, an explosive villain who works with the sinister Cobra.
Making most things go boom by 9 a.m. And most people do all day.
Naturally, as the 2 big men on the film, Roadblock and Firefly eventually battle each other in a clash of the Titans. During the filming of G.I. Joe Retaliation, an encounter between Stevenson and Johnson left one of them a bloody mess. In an interview with the Daily Record, Stevenson recalled, "The worst moment was when we filmed the first big fight. I spun around and accidentally caught him right across the bridge of his nose. I drew blood and I was worried, but Dwayne just shrugged it off. He was great about it and just said, 'These things happen.'" Stevenson added how the intensity and physicality of their action scenes resulted in numerous bruises throughout production, and admitted that Johnson ended up popping him on the nose as well. In the world of pro wrestling, that's referred to as a receipt. Due to his height and rugged good looks, Ray Stevenson was often cast as physically formidable characters in mostly action-centric productions. The fact that so many fans still consider him the quintessential version of the Punisher is evidence of his powerful reputation as an on-screen tough guy.
Aren't you quite vicious, my dear?
Yet Stevenson surprised viewers with his work in different genres when the opportunity arose. For example, he received praise for his turn as Roger Wesley in Adam McKay's cop comedy The Other Guys, which also starred Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. Speaking with the AV Club, Stevenson gushed about the experience of working with comedians like Ferrell, and revealed that McKay called him a few days before cameras started to roll to suggest his character speak with an Australian accent. The actor obliged. Stevenson enjoyed the opportunity to exercise his sense of humor, saying, "I love doing comedy. I always maintain that there's humor in everything." Ray Stevenson's journey to becoming an actor was the furthest thing from conventional. He was already 25 when he realized it was something he wanted to pursue, eventually graduating from the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School at 29. A notable talent, he worked his way up the ranks, achieving mainstream recognition thanks to his role as Dagonet in 2004's King Arthur. His big breakthrough came a year later when he was cast in the lead role of Titus Pullo in the HBO limited series Rome. From there, his career took off and the film offers flooded in. Surprisingly, Stevenson didn't become a member of the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, or SAG-AFTRA, until later in his acting career. Speaking to Backstage, Stevenson revealed how Rome helped him earn the coveted union card, saying, "Over the course of 2 seasons, I created quite a bit of interest, and that gave me my representation in the States and, ergo, started my movie career at 44, which is almost unheard of." It's remarkable to consider how Stevenson worked on a blockbuster like King Arthur without being a part of the union. Throughout his career, Ray Stevenson shared the screen with numerous big-name stars, including Dwayne Johnson, Clive Owen, and Chris Hemsworth. As is the case in most lines of work, co-workers end up following each other on social media, occasionally interacting, but also getting hard blocks if they rat you out to the boss. In 2015, Uproxx asked Stevenson who his favorite person to follow online was. The actor replied, "A Japanese actor I worked with on Thor, Asano Tadanobu. He's involved in 3 or 4 rock bands, has his own online fashion brand, and includes photos of his latest looks from whatever project he's working on. And he posts sketch cartoons, which are great." In 2011's Thor, Asano portrayed the part of Hogun, one of the Warriors 3, and he returned to the role for the next 2 sequels. The Japanese actor also appeared as Lord Kira in 2013's 47 Ronin, and the God of Thunder Raiden in 2021's Mortal Kombat movie. From Titus Pullo in Rome to Danny Green in Kill the Irishman and Blackbeard in Black Sails, Ray Stevenson showed a knack for portraying historical figures on screen. As a result, the industry and audiences associated him with period pieces, and he appeared to gravitate toward those types of projects more than others. In an interview with Geeks Worldwide, Stevenson confessed, "I consider myself a historical nerd and clearly see the correlation between these historical figures and the massive changes that the world was undergoing with the spread of civilization and the reach of England." In the same interview, the actor also revealed how he believed history had been distorted by sensationalism, such as the pamphlets and stories of pirates like Blackbeard.
He actually seems to have been a fairly intelligent man, a good leader, a bold, dangerous pirate.
However, as an actor researching a role, he would seek out the kernels of truth in each account and then try to look at the story from his character's unique perspective, coupled with the demands of the script. One of Stevenson's last completed films before he died was the historical drama Gateway to the West, which centers on real-life events in which the Mongolian army invaded Hungary. Ray Stevenson achieved a unique distinction in the Star Wars universe by portraying 2 different characters.
If Gar Saxon could see you now.
I know, right?
The actor voiced Gar Saxon in the animated shows Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, while also playing Baylan Skoll in the live-action Ahsoka series. The latter sees Stevenson living every fan's biggest dream of wielding a lightsaber and going toe-to-toe with Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka Tano. Stevenson recognized the magnitude and importance of stepping into the beloved Star Wars franchise. Speaking to Entertainment Weekly, he revealed the intense preparation and dedication that went into his portrayal of Baylan, while praising the environment and hard work that his collaborators put into making the Disney Plus series come to life. On a personal level, Stevenson couldn't help but get caught up in the moment when he picked up a lightsaber for the first time. He confided to Entertainment Weekly, "I must admit, the first time you turn a lightsaber on, you make the noise. And then you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Everybody does that, but you just can't help it." Even after he established himself in blockbusters, Stevenson occasionally popped up in unexpected films. One of his more out-of-the-blue roles came in 2018's action film Accident Man, based on the comic written by Pat Mills and Tony Skinner and illustrated by a variety of artists. The film stars Scott Adkins as Mike Fallon, an assassin who possesses the ability to make his hits look like accidents.
Never get angry, never get involved, and most importantly, never get cold.
Stevenson plays Fallon's mentor and father figure Big Ray. Adkins and Stevens reprise their parts for the 2022 sequel Accident Man: Hitman's Holiday. Adkins, who is also the producer and co-writer of the films, revealed to The Hollywood News that the role of Big Ray was conceived with Stevenson in mind, saying, "He was always on the list and he was the first guy we went out to and the first guy we got. That was a great coup. We need someone who is a great actor and someone who can sign on and help us finance the movie." So for those who watched and enjoyed the Accident Man franchise, you owe Stevenson a debt of gratitude for adding his star power to the project. Thanks to his versatility as an actor and desire to spread his wings, Ray Stevenson appeared in everything from historical pieces to big-budget blockbusters. This afforded him the opportunity to star alongside a wealth of extraordinary talent. such as Anthony Hopkins and Rene Russo in Thor, Denzel Washington and Gary Oldman in The Book of Eli, and Samuel L. Jackson in Big Game. During the press junket for Big Game, Stevenson revealed to Topless Robot that he didn't get overawed by the stars with whom he shared the screen. No matter how famous they were, he found them to be professionals like him, who were there to serve the movie, not their egos. He went on to say, "It just appears to be such a great, warm, cuddly teddy bear feeling is the fact that the bigger they are, the more open and giving and consummately professional actors are, and there's fearlessness." Stevenson explained that in his experience, the more experienced actors weren't afraid to change things up in the middle of scenes to figure out what worked best for the film. More importantly, they never tried to outshine or upstage others, choosing to be collaborators with their focus always remaining on the best way to elevate the film in question. Although there was no direct sequel to Lexi Alexander's Punisher Warzone, Ray Stevenson did get another chance at running amok as Frank Castle, albeit in a more family-friendly manner. He lent his voice to the animated version of the Punisher that appears in the Superhero Squad show.
We're nothing but white blood cells, hunting the infection called crime, a sickness that sneaks in through the cracks.
He voices the character in the same gritty way he played him in the live-action movie, leaving the other more fun-loving heroes shocked at how intense he is. Undoubtedly, Stevenson's straight delivery adds to the comedic effect of his scenes, as he becomes almost, but not quite, a parody of Marvel's edgy anti-hero and his bloodlust for vengeance. Speaking about the role to the AV Club, Stevenson opened up more about the experience, saying, "It was strange. I went up to a studio somewhere in LA and voiced over all these lines. I haven't even seen it. But yeah, apparently it's out there in the wonderful world." While he may not have seen the fruits of his labor, he jumped at the opportunity to play the Punisher again. As a result of the experience, Stevenson admitted to a keen interest in doing more voice acting. He'd done a bit of it in London when he was a young actor. However, he knew the timing would be tough to work out with his busy movie and television career. When actors are asked about their favorite performance, they'll often tell the interviewer it's their current one, much the same way a musician always says their new song or album is their best work ever. But Ray Stevenson decided on a different approach when he spoke to journalist Arthur Cade during the press tour for Black Sails. Instead of declaring the Pirate series to be his greatest accomplishment to date, Stevenson cited Rome, not only because it was a project that elevated him to superstardom, but for personal reasons as well. Stevenson recalled, "It has to be Rome. That was one of the major periods of my life. It turned my life around. I found my partner, who was my landlady." Stevenson joked about how Elisabetta Carraccia raised his rent even after they became a couple, while telling the story about how his work on the series led to them living together, having 3 children, and a dog. He also explained that while he was working on Rome, he learned to look at acting from an entirely new perspective. Instead of second-guessing himself or trying too hard to remember what was next, he shifted his mindset and focused completely on what was in front of him and his character in that moment. This changed the way he approached his work from there on out. In Season 7 of Dexter, Ray Stevenson turns in a memorable performance as the mobster Isaac Sirko, who wants revenge on Dexter Morgan for killing his lover, Victor Boskov.
I run one of the biggest crime syndicates in the Caucasus. Who is Dexter Morgan?
It's a very different kind of role from any he'd played before, which is exactly the reason the actor agreed to do it. In an interview with Yahoo, Stevenson talked about receiving a call from Dexter producer and writer Scott Buck, with whom he'd worked on Rome. Buck explained how the Sirko character would fit into the overall arc of the show, as well as his underlying motivations, all of which fascinated Stevenson. Stevenson went on to explain, "Sirko is a cold stone mobster, a killer with a secret, but he's basically a man whose heart has been ripped out of his body." Stevenson added how Sirko gave up everything, including ultimately his life, in his quest for vengeance because he loved Boskov with all his heart. Considering Ray Stevenson's affinity for historical dramas, was anyone really surprised when he was eventually cast as the wandering sailor Oter in Vikings? He appears in 11 episodes of Vikings Season 6. Of course, Stevenson possessed some prior relevant experience of sorts, having portrayed a space Viking in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, as Stevenson revealed to journalist Matt J. Horn while discussing his work in Thor, he had a closer connection to the world of Vikings than most people may realize. Stevenson explained, "I had my formative years in the northeast of England, a place littered with Vikings and Norse mythology. Indeed, my father would often tell me that the derivative of my surname Stevenson was in fact Svensson, a fine old Viking name." Many actors love to talk about how acting is a calling, something more than a profession, and how they do it for artistic value and spiritual satisfaction.
If you get to go to work and earn your living as an actor, you're done. What else would you want?
Then there are others who, in addition to the passion they feel for the process, admit that they don't hate the fame side of the job. They can be open about enjoying the glitz and glamour of it all, as well as the many perks of stardom, such as seeing action figures based on the characters they portrayed. Ray Stevenson was one of those, and he confessed to having a very particular goal for his his career. In an interview with Bill during the press tour for the Transporter Refueled, Stevenson revealed, "It was a dream of mine one day to have an action figure." He couldn't understand how anyone wouldn't be excited about the idea, while expressing his delight at having not one, but 3 action figures out in the world. The actor joked that he couldn't get too carried away with himself, though, because his children brought him back down to earth. In fact, his kids had ripped the heads off his action figures, and one of them even replaced his dad's head with a Lego one. While Stevenson didn't say which figure his child recapitated, he had a good laugh about the whole thing. Ray Stevenson's death deeply affected his former co-stars, especially his fellow Ahsoka castmates, since the Disney Plus series was one of his final projects before his passing. In fact, Ahsoka even includes a tribute to Stevenson in the closing credits of the first episode, Part 1, Master and Apprentice. In an interview with People, Rosario Dawson remembered Stevenson and his powerful performance as Baylan Skoll, but she also took the time to praise him as a special and kind human being, recalling, "He'd have these crystals that had all these different meanings from where, he felt like spiritually where he came from and what he wanted to be resonating. And we'd sit and have these conversations about the divine feminine." Dawson went on to say that he was a fascinating and thoughtful individual to talk to, as he loved to discuss philosophy and his family.
From his early days with Britain's national swim team to his current status as one of the world's most bankable movie stars, Jason Statham has lived an interesting life. If you want to learn more about the iconic English action hero, here's the untold truth of Jason Statham. If Jason Statham is starring in a movie, you best believe that there's going to be some action involved. Whether it's an adrenaline-pumping car chase, a bullet-spraying shootout, or a good old-fashioned bare-handed beatdown, the action star seems to feed off of stunt work. And more often than not, Statham is actually the one performing the stunts too. As he explained to IGN, "I'll do more if they let me. I've never really been frightened to do anything." In an interview with The Guardian, the Trainsporter star talked about how his early ambition of becoming a stuntman was initially sparked by watching a man doing a high dive into a hotel pool, saying, "He'd done this sort of reverse layout and I was like, I'd love to do that." Years later, the young daredevil had mastered the craft of diving, and he was even selected to compete for the British national team in the 1990 Commonwealth Games. Although Statham ultimately retired from the sport, perhaps his intense diving training helped hone his body for the demanding stunt work that his film career would bring. A lot of today's biggest actors and actresses were taught how to hone their craft through years of studying drama or performing in prestigious theater productions. Jason Statham, however, apparently has a bit of a different origin story than your typical A-lister. When speaking to Esquire, the crank actor opened up about how his father taught him to hustle on the London streets when he was just a teenager, saying, "I'd sit down outside of Harrods and I'd pitch the jewelry. And what I'm selling is costume jewelry, basically, but I'm selling it with a bit of street theater and having a bit of fun with it, making a living. An actor is nothing if not a skilled salesman, right?" Statham went on to boast that he was such a talented hustler that he could pull in as much as $3,000 in a weekend. So what did the future Fast and Furious star say he'd spend all that dough on? Would buy cars and would race, cars I've always loved. Statham literally went from hawking sketchy goods on street corners to starring in blockbuster action movies. But throughout it all, the man's love for automobiles has remained strong. Who says bromance is dead? Jason Statham and Guy Ritchie, the well-renowned director of action flicks like 2017's King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, prove that having a dependable go-to guy can be a real asset in Hollywood. The duo make up a powerful actor-director combo, joining the ranks of other successful tag teams. Ritchie is actually the man responsible for jump-starting Statham's acting career, casting him as Bacon in 1998's Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, despite the fact that he had absolutely zero acting experience. As Statham explained to Esquire, Ritchie, who he'd met through an earlier modeling gig, approached him about the role because the streetwise character was similar to Statham, saying he just wanted someone who was authentic. He said, "I'm gonna get someone from drama school to do this? How can they learn what you've learned?" After Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, the two collaborated again in 2000's Snatch and 2005's Revolver. In an interview with Yahoo Entertainment, the Sherlock Holmes director had nothing but kind words for his British BFF. As he put it, "Jason Statham is one of my most favorite people in the entire world. He's grumpy, and he's one of the few grumpy people that doesn't annoy me in any way." In 1986, Nestle executives introduced the world to one of the catchiest commercials in American history.
"Give me a break, give me a break, break me up a piece of that Kit Kat bar."
But over in the UK, candy lovers were more familiar with a different slogan, one that went,
"Have a break. Have a Kit Kat."
The catchphrase lasted for 47 years, up until the early 2000s, when a company spokesperson announced a change in their market approach. Part of that plan involved a brand new slogan, "Make the most of your break." And another piece of that advertising campaign involved one of England's hottest names at the time, Jason Statham. Riding the success of popular films like 2002's The Transporter and 2003's The Italian Job, Statham nabbed a partnership with the candy company, making him the break philosopher. The actor starred in a total of 3 ads for Kit Kat, and the brand's then account director, Emma Stewart-Smith, was very pleased with their selection, explaining, "Jason Statham was the best choice. He is down-to-earth and credible when telling the stories. He hasn't done ads before, so people tend to listen to him more. Also, women fancy him, and men think he's a good bloke." Although they've been around for about 20 years, the commercials are still pretty funny today. Statham's love life proves that age is nothing but a number. The British stud has dated a number of beautiful women throughout the past few decades, and most of them have been younger than him by double digits. Statham dated English model and media personality Kelly Brook for 7 years before ultimately calling it quits in 2004. He then spent nearly a year with former Bachelorette starlet Sophie Monk before getting serious with Alex Zossman, who he'd go on to date until early 2010. After he and Zossman parted ways, the Expendables star was spotted out with former Victoria's Secret angel Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. Despite their 20-year age difference, the pair, who got engaged in 2016, have now been going strong for over 10 years. Sylvester Stallone's Expendables movies don't exactly shy away from killing. The total kill count in the 2010 original tallies up to 221 deaths, a number that's more than doubled in its explosive sequel, 2012's The Expendables 2. For the third installment in the Grizzly franchise, Jason Statham apparently nearly wound up on the kill count in real life after a dangerous stunt went awry. When speaking to The Mirror at the Expendables 3 premiere in 2014, Stallone told the tale of how his co-star had a very close call during the film's production, saying, "He faced death. He was test driving a 3-ton truck and the brakes run out. Statham, doing his own stunts per usual, crashed the runaway vehicle into the Black Sea. According to Stallone, if it had been anyone else driving the truck, they most likely would have died, saying, "We would have drowned, but because Jason is an Olympic-quality diver, he got out of it." Years later, Statham recalled the near-death experience during an interview with the Red Bulletin, noting how it changed his attitude. "It's a real recalibration of everything. From that day on, I've been so appreciative of life and being able to walk on the ground. I think we all need an experience like that, one that puts things in perspective." Unlike some of the action heroes he's portrayed on the big screen, Statham seemingly understands that he's not invincible. Jason Statham's filmography proves that he's always up for joining a multi-film franchise. In addition to the wildly popular Expendables and Fast and Furious cinematic universes, he's also filmed a number of sequels to his own films, such as Transporter 2 and 3, Crank 2, High Voltage, and Mechanic Resurrection. Strangely enough, there's one multi-billion-dollar entity that the British bad boy opted out of, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When speaking to Den of Geek in 2017, Marvel boss Kevin Feige confirmed that he had once considered Statham for a role in the MCU, but scheduling conflicts kept it from happening. Feige had nothing but nice things to say of the action icon, noting that the actor even called him after the fact to apologize, explaining, "He was saying, 'Sorry it didn't work out, maybe next time.' He couldn't have been nicer." The role he was considered for is anyone's guess, but some fans believe that Statham was up for the part of notorious daredevil baddie Bullseye. This news was somewhat surprising considering that Statham had made some pretty disrespectful comments about Marvel movies when speaking to Italian website E400 Calci a couple years earlier, saying, "I could take my grandma and put her in a cape and they'll put her on a green screen and they'll have stunt doubles come in and do all the action. Anybody can do it." Honestly, if Statham's grandma is anything like he is, then she probably would make a believable superhero. In 2005's thrilling Revolver, Jason Statham plays a scheming gambler named Jake Green. While in prison, Green discovers a formulaic game-winning strategy with the help of 2 fellow inmates, a skilled conman, and a chess master. And as it turns out, Green's skills on the chessboard are apparently something that he shares with the film star in real life. In an interview with Cinema.com, Statham spoke about the competitive relationship he has with Revolver's director and longtime friend Guy Ritchie, noting that they are fierce chess rivals.
It's beautiful, man. You have to admire the opponent's elegance. Check.
To hear him tell it, he's clearly the superior player. The toughest moment is getting Guy Ritchie to pay his debts when he loses at chess. He just won't pay up, he won't accept the loss. I have to live with that. However, Ritchie has also playfully claimed that he doesn't respect Statham as a chess player, so the jury is still out as to which talented celebrity is a real chess whiz. In 2013's underrated action thriller Homefront, Statham plays Phil Broker, a recently widowed former DEA agent who moves to a small Louisiana town to raise his young daughter. When things go sideways and the town's drug dealer targets the new family, it's up to Broker to fend off the bad guys and keep his kids safe. Statham plays the paternal role with great authenticity, which was perhaps an indicator of things to come. In June 2017, Statham and his fiancée, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, welcomed their firstborn son, Jack Oscar, to the world. Since then, Statham has looked every bit the part of a proud and typical dad. Young Jack certainly has a bright future with such talented parents to look up to. When speaking to Now This, the Meg's leading man opened up about how becoming a dad truly changed his life and reshuffled his priorities, saying, "You learn as soon as you become a dad that all your selfish desires are put on a very large back burner. It's an incredible transition, and it's the greatest feeling in the world." He may be a tough guy on screen, but fatherhood proves that Statham may have a soft side after all.
I'm a big softie, and I get told off for being too soft.
In 2018's thrilling Shark Tale, The Meg, Statham played Jonas Taylor, a scorned ex-rescue diver with a personal vendetta against a mysterious, massive underwater beast that only he believes is real. When the creature, which is revealed to be a gargantuan prehistoric shark called a megalodon, eventually rears its ugly head again, it's up to Taylor and crew to find it and take it down before it unleashes an aquatic killing spree. It's like Jaws on steroids. While the film's enormous man-eater is only a product of CGI and bad dreams, don't get it twisted. Statham probably would have hopped in the water even if the thing was real. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, the notorious English daredevil recalled a time when he went diving with bull sharks in Fiji, admitting that it was an ordeal being inches away from a swarm of the large toothy fish, saying, "All of the fear, or the perceived fear, is done in your own head before you get down there with them. So once you're swimming down there with all the other divers, it's phenomenal. It's one of the greatest experiences you could have, for me anyway." Swimming in shark-infested waters is apparently just another relaxing day in the life of Jason Statham.
Mark Hamill has been a household name for decades, and while his name's become synonymous with Star Wars' Luke Skywalker, undoubtedly his best-known role, there's a lot more to the actor than the moisture farmer turned space wizard he's so often conflated with. One area in which Mark Hamill and Skywalker are remarkably similar is in their definitively unglamorous upbringings. Though Hamill didn't grow up as the son of farmers on a desert planet, he was the fourth of 7 children, all of whom were ushered from location to location as their father was stationed in various places as a U.S. Navy captain. Though Hamill had the exciting opportunity to live in Japan for part of his youth, that didn't prevent him from starting his acting career like so many bright-eyed young people, working at a fast food restaurant and racking up smaller roles. In fact, Hamill was even fired from his job at a Jack in the Box restaurant for doing too good an impression of the chain's mascot character as patrons used the drive-thru window.
My manager didn't think it was very funny. He told me to go home and never come back.
Wow.
Yeah, I got
Fired from Jack in the Box.
Fired for being in character.
This, of course, proved early on that he had a knack for voicing kooky clowns, a skill that would come in handy a couple of decades down the line. Though Luke Skywalker was his breakout role, Hamill had actually been acting since at least 1963, when he took on a small role in the wildly popular soap opera General Hospital. He continued to have brief on-screen roles in TV hits of the day, including The Bill Cosby Show and The Partridge Family. Things went on in this fashion for some time, with Hamill finally landing a few recurring characters on the new Scooby-Doo movies, Genie, and the Texas Wheelers. So while he wasn't on the fast track to stardom right upon his arrival in Los Angeles, he was certainly putting in the work and building up a substantial portfolio, something he could present to George Lucas to seal his fate for the rest of his life. Luke Skywalker was a lucky break, but Hamill was a hard-working kid, proving that destiny isn't the only factor in achieving stardom. In order to combat the typecasting that would inevitably result from his portrayal as the wide-eyed young hero of destiny Luke Skywalker, Hamill branched out into other forms of acting. First, as many young actors do, he spent a brief stint in the early 80s working in Broadway plays like The Elephant Man and Amadeus. He followed this endeavor with a dive headfirst into voice acting. As noted earlier, his penchant for impressions and silly voices would only aid him further in his career. His keen interest in comic books helped him to land the role of the Joker in the beloved cartoon Batman the Animated Series. But Hamill has done work outside cartoons as well, diving into the video game industry as a voice artist.
Surprise! You fell for the old sick Joker gag, Batman.
Naturally, some of these roles are reprisals of his work in the Star Wars and Batman franchises, but his first video game voice opportunity came in 1993 in the mystery thriller Gabriel Knight: Sins of the Fathers. He's portrayed characters in several sci-fi military-themed games, like the Wing Commander series, and one wonders if he was able to pull from his experience growing up on naval bases. It's no secret that Hamill is a comic book fan, and thank goodness too, considering he appears at one comic convention after another to the delight of his adoring fans. But Hamill has also had a hand in writing some comics of his own. In the mid-90s, right before the Star Wars prequel films, Hamill co-authored The Black Pearl with his cousin Eric Johnson. The comic, featuring art by H.M. Baker and published by Dark Horse, was a 5-issue series intended to be collected into one volume at the end of its run. It follows Luther Drake, who inadvertently prevents an abduction and continues to pursue a life of nighttime vigilantism. Sounds a bit like Batman, doesn't it? But it's the post-Frank Miller type of Batman, dark and conflicted and morally ambiguous. The comic was originally written as a screenplay, and as recently as 2010, Hamill still had intentions to see this dark vision brought to life on screen with himself in the director's chair. While part of Hamill's online presence is populated by his political thoughts, he's also dedicated a decent chunk of it to interacting with fans. He continues to have the most delightful knack for self-deprecating humor and a genuine gratitude for the fans who have supported him from the beginning, or even those newer fans who have come to Star Wars with the newest installments of the franchise. He spends a lot of his tweeting energy singing the praises of his fellow actors, promoting Star Wars-related news, and sharing stories of his friendships with the likes of the late, adored Carrie Fisher. Hamill is a savvy Twitter user, in other words. Social media certainly has its problems, but with 3.2 million followers, it's safe to say the force is with him when it comes to interacting with his audience. Hamill has been married to his wife, dental hygienist Mary Lou York, since 1978, not long after the release of A New Hope. The couple have 3 children and 1 grandchild, and seem to have successfully avoided a lot of the typical drama that Hollywood couples tend to fall into. Hamill and York's long, happy marriage is often attributed to York's lack of celebrity. They broke up for a period so Hamill could get the rush of stardom out of his system, but in the end, family and stability won out. By marrying a non-celebrity, Hamill wasn't competing with all of Hollywood's other leading men, and he married her not for her star power or her paparazzi appeal, but because they had a genuine connection. No doubt the two have worked very hard at keeping their relationship alive, but it is clear that they still love each other very much, and it is gratifying to see such a healthy marriage flourish, even as Hamill has returned to the Hollywood limelight with the final installments of the Star Wars franchise's Skywalker saga. Despite the concerns about being typecast, Hamill has done an excellent job of proving he can have a satisfying and successful career outside Star Wars. So as the torch is passed from Luke to Rey, we see Hamill continuing in much the same manner as usual. He dons the animated white face of the Joker time and again in various new animated DC series, and makes guest appearances on TV series like The Big Bang Theory.
Hi. I'm gonna need a minute.
But some roles and projects stand out more than others. He put his villainous voice to good use as the devious doll Chucky in the 2019 film Child's Play, before taking the role of the scientist in The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, the long-hyped prequel to Jim Henson's 1982 cult classic puppet-fueled Fantasia. Continuing his long appreciation for the comics medium, he's also taken a role in Amazon's adaptation of Robert Kirkman, Cory Walker, and Ryan Ottley's Invincible, which chronicles the life of the son of a superhero. Still in the spotlight after all these years, Mark Hamill has proven he has the talent to tackle a wide variety of roles, and we can't wait to see what he does next.
London-born actor Robert Pattinson skyrocketed to fame with the massively popular Twilight series, and he recently made headlines when it was announced he'd be playing the titular role in The Batman.
And?
From modeling gigs to his sometimes dramatic love life, here's everything you need to know about Robert Pattinson. After honing his craft in several theater productions, Robert Pattinson landed his first big break at the age of 17. He was cast as Cedric Diggory in the 2005 film Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
For a moment there, I thought you were gonna let it get me.
He chose playing Cedric over attending university, and the film took his acting career to a whole new level. His performance was widely praised, and numerous publications hailed him as the next Jude Law, a label that proved difficult to shake. In a 2008 interview with the BBC, Pattinson was asked whether he agreed with that assessment, and he replied, "No, you get a bit of heat and everybody says you're this, you're that. Then it dies down. You just do jobs. I don't know any actor who's followed through, when they say he's the next this, and then he actually has become the next that. I don't get that. I don't see what the point is." The fourth Harry Potter film put Robert Pattinson on the map, but Twilight turned him into a household name. Pattinson landed the role of Edward Cullen in a rather roundabout way. He was in Los Angeles auditioning for a role he assumed was already in the bag, and wound up bombing that audition. In 2017, he told W Magazine,
"And then the next day it was the Twilight audition, and I think I was at such a kind of nothing to lose state. It was quite easy for me to do."
And so he was cast as an unusually sensitive vampire who falls in love with a young woman named Bella, portrayed by Kristen Stewart. The role earned him legions of fans, many of them teenage girls, but that didn't stop him from mocking the Twilight franchise in interviews.
My entire performance is based on having extreme discomfort having contact lenses in your eyes, just kind of like that.
If Edward was not a fictional character, you just met him in reality, he's one of those guys who'd be like an axe murderer.
He also wasn't opposed to mocking Stephenie Meyer, the author of the Twilight novels.
I was convinced that Stephenie was convinced she was Bella, and it wasn't. It was like it was a book that wasn't supposed to be published.
It sounds like Pattinson has softened his stance in recent years. In April 2019, he told USA Today, "It's lovely now that the mania is not so intense. Now the intensity has died down and it's just very warm memories." In May 2019, it was announced that Robert Pattinson would play a young incarnation of a certain brooding superhero in The Batman, a film that's set to premiere in 2021. Rather predictably, the news sent the Twitterverse into a frenzy, and not everyone was on board with the idea. One user wrote, "I've never been so disappointed in a Batman casting. Robert Pattinson is a horrible choice to play the character." Film critic Mike McGranahan was clearly torn by the casting choice, tweeting, "I honestly don't know how to feel about Robert Pattinson as Batman. On one hand, I hate the idea because I can't even remotely picture him as the Dark Knight. On the other hand, I absolutely love the idea for the exact same reason." Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel offered this particularly hot take.
If you think about it, it makes sense. He was a vampire, now he's a bat.
In 2012, Robert Pattinson's relationship with Kristen Stewart turned him into irresistible tabloid fodder. Though they tried to keep the relationship under wraps, they were forced to come clean in the wake of a highly publicized scandal. Stewart finally acknowledged their relationship after she was photographed being intimate with then-married director Robert Sanders, who worked with Stewart on Snow White and the Huntsman.
When a famous actress gets caught cheating by the paparazzi and then makes a very public apology, it's no surprise people everywhere are reacting with 140 characters or less.
Stewart profusely apologized in a public statement, writing, "This momentary indiscretion has jeopardized the most important thing in my life, the person I love and respect the most, Rob. I love him. I love him. I'm so sorry." Stewart and Pattinson briefly got back together after the scandal, but they split for good in 2013. In 2019, Pattinson suggested that he's on good terms with Stewart, so perhaps this story has a happy ending after all. With his chiseled features, it's not terribly surprising that Robert Pattinson would try his hand at modeling. He told Closer magazine that he left the industry after 4 years at the age of 16, explaining, "When I first started, I was quite tall and looked like a girl, so I got lots of jobs, because it was during that period where the androgynous look was cool. Then I guess I became too much of a guy, so I never got any more jobs. I had the most unsuccessful modeling career." In 2010, at the height of Twilight fever, Pattinson was reportedly offered a huge contract with Burberry, but he didn't take it. A source told The Mirror, "They went to Robert, but he immediately, politely turned them down. As far as Robert sees things, he's an actor by trade and that's his art. He doesn't want to start becoming a brand or anything." If that's true, Pattinson obviously had a change of heart just a few short years later. In 2013, he became the face of DR Homme, and he's been working with the brand ever since. As it turns out, Jude Law was the face of DR Homme just a few years prior, which means Robert Pattinson became the next Jude Law after all.
What's he got better than me?
If you only know Charlie Hunnam as a badass on a Harley, wait until you see his pet cat. Plus, why he didn't land 50 Shades of Grey or Thor. All that and more right here. If you woke up one morning as a famous actor with money to blow, what's the first thing you'd splurge on? For a ton of today's celebrities, it's all about the footwear.
Hold the fudge. You mean to tell me that nobody snapped up those bad boys?
Charlie Hunnam certainly had a shoe obsession during the early part of his career as well. His Achilles heel? Nike Air Max 90s. Speaking to GQ in 2013, Hunnam explained that when he was a kid, his family couldn't afford to buy him expensive shoes. But when Nike reissued the infrared colorway in the early 2000s, he couldn't resist. He explained, "I don't know how it happened, but I became obsessed with buying every colorway I could get my hands on." Although he had amassed a massive collection, he apparently hardly ever wore them, opting to keep most pairs in their boxes. Later, in a 2017 interview with Elle, the actor admitted that he'd grown up, meaning that his collection of kicks had to go. He said, "I took out 6 or 7 pairs that I cared about, and I gave the rest to charity." It was actually a pair of shoes that set Charlie Hunnam off on the road to fame, success, and wealth. In the late 1990s, a teenaged Hunnam wanted to be an actor and was attending film school, but he was yet to book any work. Hunnam explained on the Graham Norton show that he found himself Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve after having spent the previous 4 hours in a pub drinking.
I was in JD Sports trying on some trainers for my brother, having a bit of a dance around, drunk.
A woman in the store was watching his inebriated act, so Hunnam playfully blew her a kiss. The woman turned out to be the production manager of Biker Grove, a long-running, family-friendly UK drama about the goings-on at an urban youth group. Hunnam was invited to audition, and he landed a part on the show as a character named Jason.
It's all laid on in this game. All we have to do is look good and cash the checks.
Although it's been over a decade since it first graced theaters, Forgetting Sarah Marshall is still widely revered as one of the finest romantic comedies of its era. Who could forget the ludicrously humorous plight of Jason Segel's Peter Breder, who regrettably vacations at the same resort as his ex-girlfriend, superstar actress Sarah Marshall, and her new beau, eccentric rocker Aldous Snow. Every actor in this 2008 classic feels perfectly picked for their respective roles. But as it turns out, the cast wasn't always set in stone, particularly with one key part. Believe it or not, Russell Brand wasn't the first choice to play Aldous Snow. Speaking to Collider, Charlie Hunnam revealed that Segel, who both wrote and starred in the film, had actually originally written the part for him. Hunnam and Segel were close friends at the time, having recently worked together on the early 2000s comedy series Undeclared. Hunnam ultimately decided that the part wasn't right for him, but he admitted that he really struggled turning his friend down. However, when he saw a piece of Brand's stand-up, he felt assured about his decision, saying, "Obviously, that's the dude who should have been playing that role. My relationship with Jason gave birth to that character, but there's no way I could have done it justice the way Russell Brand did."
It's very flexible.
Before Jamie Dornan slipped into the highly provocative role of Christian Grey in 2015's 50 Shades of Grey, Universal was apparently all in on Charlie Hunnam for the part. In fact, the author of the wildly popular literary series, E.L. James, even made the announcement over Twitter in 2013. However, as most people know by now, the pairing just wasn't meant to be. Hunnam ultimately dropped out of the role due to scheduling difficulties, while Dornan wound up being a perfectly suitable replacement. Some fans still wonder what could have been had Hunnam not turned down the role. As it turns out, the Crimson Peak actor himself sometimes does too. In 2014, Hunnam got candid with reporters about missing out on what could have been the role of a lifetime, saying, "When you put the time into something like that and a character comes alive in your mind, it's heartbreaking not to be able to play him. It was definitely kind of heartbreaking having to say goodbye to that character and not bring it to life." To the average Joe, locking lips with some of Hollywood's most attractive women might sound like a dream come true. However, in an interview with Elle, Hunnam revealed that he truthfully has a very different opinion on the matter, admitting, "Everyone thinks it's great to be an actor and get to kiss a bunch of beautiful actresses in films, but I actually hate it." While he admits that his longtime partner, Morgana McNellis, is not the biggest fan of watching her main man get steamy on screen with another woman, the Pacific Rim star cites a different personal phobia that explains his distaste for spit-swapping scenes.
I've got a little bit of germophobia.
Oh, you're a germaphobe.
I try to keep it clean.
Okay.
While this may seem like a bit of a peculiarity, there's actually a long list of celebs who are huge germaphobes. So he's certainly not alone in that regard. Knowing all of the intimate scenes required for 50 Shades of Grey, maybe it's best that Hunnam passed on the role of Christian Grey after all. Throughout the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a number of actors and actresses have seen their careers explode due to their heroic on-screen portrayals. Although it's now nearly impossible to envision anyone but Chris Hemsworth in the mighty Marvel role of Thor, the studio originally had its eye on Hunnam for the gig. During a press conference at 2017's CinemaCon Big Screen Achievement Awards, Charlie Hunnam divulged that before they found Hemsworth, Marvel was interested in bringing him on to play the God of Thunder in 2011's Thor. He recalled, "I auditioned and I met with the director and the guys at Marvel several times, and it was sort of this awkward dance that we were having." He went on to add that neither party totally bought into the idea, but he and the filmmakers played around with the potential casting for a while. Why did they ultimately change their minds? Hunnam bluntly added, "Then they found Chris Hemsworth, and that ended abruptly." There are certainly more than a few Hollywood elites who prefer playing. Some celebs are consistently single, some are constantly changing who they're dating, and some have even been engaged multiple times. Charlie Hunnam's public dating profile is a little less extravagant compared to most of his peers. Although the rumor mill has thrown Hunnam's name into more than a few unverified relationships, he's kept his dating life pretty close to the chest. When the English star was only 18 years old, he came to America to audition for Dawson's Creek. Although he didn't get the part, he met a fellow actor at the audition named Catherine Town. Only 3 weeks later, the two went to Las Vegas and got hitched. The couple stayed together for 3 years before divorcing in 2002. A few years later, Hunnam started seeing American jewelry designer Morgana McNillis, and apparently the two were simply made for each other. They've been together ever since.
I've been with my girlfriend for 14 and a half years.
If you're working on a super intense TV show for an extended period of time, there's bound to be some dramatic tension buildup behind the scenes. For a series like Sons of Anarchy, which was just as much a character piece as it was a brutally violent drama, it's totally understandable that the show's actors would clash at times with the people in charge. Speaking to Men's Journal, Hunnam admitted that sometimes things got a little dicey on set between he and the show's creator, Kurt Sutter, saying, "I love that guy, but it was hard for us to work together sometimes because we're both crazy. There has been security rushing onto set and pulling us apart before." Although that may sound a little alarming, there's nothing but love between the two men today. Hunnam referred to Sutter as his Hollywood dad in an interview with Men's Health, noting the shared respect within the pair's relationship. Apparently, the feeling is mutual. When speaking on the 100% Honest Pretty Much podcast, Sutter also had nothing but flattering things to say about his show's former lead. You may know him as broody biker bad boy Jax Teller from the ultra-violent FX hit drama Sons of Anarchy, or as the stoic hero of Pacific Rim. But Charlie Hunnam is much more than your stereotypical action hero.
I think this guy's dead, but let's check for a pulse.
Okay. Behind the scenes, he's apparently a bit more reserved than the characters he portrays in shoot-'em-up blockbusters. In an interview with GQ, Hunnam, who turned 40 in 2020, discussed how getting older has put his career in a bit of a transitional phase, and that writing has become his primary focus, saying, "I've spent these last 6 to 8 months writing 5 hours a week. I wrote a screenplay and I wrote a television show, a 6-part television show. And right now, I'm in the middle of writing a miniseries." He's actually sold 4 screenplays to major studios throughout his career, and although none of them have been made yet, he's still really enjoying the process. Of all the screenplays Charlie Hunnam has written, the most high-profile and notable is his script about the life of Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century noble who inspired the Dracula story. According to Entertainment Weekly, Hunnam began writing Vlad in 2006, and 3 years later, with a writer's strike and the author landing a regular acting gig on Sons of Anarchy, development finally began. Despite that, production still hasn't begun on Vlad, more than a decade after it was first announced. Although on screen he often portrays tough guys and scrappy badasses, Charlie Hunnam apparently has a major soft spot for kitty cats in real life. In particular, his pet cat George, who he rescued on his roof during a rainstorm.
I thought it was a piece of wood. He was lying like this, half submerged in a puddle.
Aww.
And I picked him up, and my heart broke.
When his longtime partner, Morgana McNillis, took to her Instagram to try and start a GoFundMe page for a kitten in need of surgery, her main man came through in a major way. In a post updating her followers on the kitten's progress, McNillis wrote, "Charlie just found out about the GoFundMe for Stitch's surgery and was very upset that I did not ask him directly. He insists on covering the remaining cost of the vet bills." Apparently, she didn't ask him in the first place because he had already paid for another cat surgery that month. Charlie Hunnam is a friend to not just felines, but dogs as well. In 2019, Entertainment Weekly posted an adorable video to their Instagram page showing Hunnam cuddling up with puppies for National Pet Day. Nowadays, it seems like TV reboots, spin-offs, and long-running continuations have become an industry norm. Netflix's Fuller House breathed new life into the legendary 90s sitcom Full House in 2016. Meanwhile, Star Trek Picard returned Sir Patrick Stewart to his long-extinct Star Trek role. And Peacock's remake of Saved by the Bell brought a few familiar faces, including Mario Lopez and Elizabeth Berkley, back to Bayside High. While some stars may be all too happy to slip back into the roles that jump-started their Hollywood careers, Charlie Hunnam isn't one of them. While the British actor is genuinely grateful for the show that put him on the map, he has absolutely no intention of ever returning to the world of Sons of Anarchy as Jack's teller.
He's not with us anymore, and so I would never bring him back from the dead for something like that.
For Charlie Hunnam, it's all about looking forward in life.
For decades, he was touted as the best of the Bonds, but there's more to Sean Connery's life than his days as a secret agent. On October 31st, 2020, the actor died in his sleep in the Bahamas following a long illness. This is the story of his life beyond Bond. Born to a working-class family in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1930, Thomas Sean Connery had a childhood that belied the glamorous life for which he was eventually destined, including leaving school at the age of 9 to begin working to help his family get by.
I used to walk to work in the dark. My mother went to work at the same time, and then I used to go straight from there at 6 in the morning and go straight to school.
Like many young people, Connery did not immediately gravitate to what would become his very successful career. Instead, he joined the Royal Navy at the age of 16, about a year after World War II ended. He spent not quite 3 years in the Navy, earning the title of Able Seaman assigned to the HMS Formidable. However, he was discharged at the age of 19 because of duodenal ulcers, an affliction which ran in his family. Both before and after his stint in the Navy, Connery took on many odd jobs, such as delivering milk, bricklaying, lifeguarding, and even coffin polishing. In his spare time, Connery took up bodybuilding, competing in the 1953 Mr. Universe competition. Though he eventually drifted away from bodybuilding, he used his physique as an artist model at the Edinburgh College of Art. Connery was repeatedly praised as one of the sexiest men alive, so it stands to reason that he spent a good deal of his youth engaged in activities that centered on his body and his beauty.
Well, I mean, what are you supposed to reply to that?
Sean Connery was nothing if not a very dedicated hard worker. It seems he never rested on his laurels, even if it did take him some jumping around from job to job before he committed to acting. He spent about 8 years modeling and taking on bit parts and chorus parts in stage plays, TV, and film before he got a foothold in starring roles. His first major part on the silver screen was opposite Lana Turner in the 1958 film Another Time, Another Place. 4 years later, he would assume the role that went on to make him world famous, starring in the original James Bond movie Dr. No. It is startling in retrospect that a man from such humble beginnings became nearly synonymous with the sexy, sophisticated international man of mystery. It lends credence to the idea that anyone really can become anything if they put in the effort, and if they're very, very lucky. Once Connery became Bond, it was all uphill for his career. Many actors are the progeny of other actors, and Connery passed his acting genes down to his son from his first marriage, Jason Connery. Though not as famous as his father was, Jason has enjoyed a steady, stable career since appearing at the age of 20 in The Lords of Discipline in 1983. Aside from acting, he has also helmed film projects as director, starting with the film Pandemic in 2008. In a funny link to his dad, Jason played a film version of Bond author Ian Fleming in the TV drama Spy Maker: The Secret Life of Ian Fleming. Though Connery was known around the world as Sir Sean Connery for the last 20 years of his life, it was a bumpy road to his eventual knighting in 2000. It was widely rumored that he was twice denied knighthood by Donald Dewar, former Scottish Labour Party politician, because of his political views. Connery is a member of the Scottish National Party, a centre-left party which favours Scottish independence from the United Kingdom. Needless to say, Scottish independence is a bit of a snub to the good old Queen of England, so it's fair to see that Britain may not want to extend the honour of knighthood to a man so vocally opposed to its monarchy. Incidentally, Dwyer passed away on October 2000, just a few months after Connery received his knighthood. Despite Connery's dedication to the Scottish National Party, he seemed to have been very proud of his knighthood. He was credited as Sir Sean Connery in more recent roles. Though Connery's rise from rags to riches makes for an incredible story, there are a few shadier aspects of his life and career, one of those being his allegedly fraught relationship with taxes. Connery was accused of being a tax exile, living away from Scotland to avoid paying income taxes. He released his tax information in 2003 to dispel these rumors, though there are claims that he would have paid more if he had lived in the country at the time. He again came under fire for alleged property tax fraud regarding a villa he and his wife owned in Marbella, Spain. Though Connery was acquitted, his wife Micheline Roquebrune was investigated. Initially, the fraud has been referred to as Operation Goldfinger, a callback to one of Connery's Bond films.
I think you've made your point, Goldfinger. Thank you for the demonstration.
Though he reached the end of his life while living in the Bahamas, Connery is most inextricably linked with Scotland, a place he maintained he would only move back to if and when it gained independence from Britain. But there is another land that has chosen to honor the famous Scot, Estonia. More specifically, the Scottish Club of Tallinn, Estonia funded a bronze bust to the actor through private donations. The Scottish Club, begun as a society to sample whiskey, is comprised of Estonians enamored with Scottish culture, as well as a handful of Scottish expatriates. Connery is not the first influential Scot the club has honored with a statue. His bust joins that of Robert Burns, the 18th century poet perhaps best known for penning Auld Lang Syne and often recognized as Scotland's national poet. Tallinn might seem like a strange location for a society honoring Scottish legends, but it's clear that the members, who raised about $14,000 to have the statue made, are dedicated to their cause. Just about every celebrity has a pet cause or area of activism that they regularly support. For Connery, his own upbringing has prompted an interest in education. He helped co-found the Scottish International Education Trust in 1971 with his friend Sir Jackie Stewart to financially support promising Scots achieve a better education. In fact, Connery donated his entire salary from his work on the Bond film Diamonds Are Forever to the trust, a sum which his website claims was well over $1 million. His philanthropy doesn't stop there, but his site declines to list the apparently myriad charities and worthy causes the star has supported. Instead, it prompts visitors to consider helping others as he has, and lists his main areas of interest: education, culture, and Scotland. It seems he doesn't take his own big break for granted, acknowledging that the help he received as a young man made an immeasurable difference. Sean Connery is a sex symbol, the kind of man many wouldn't be surprised to learn has a long list of ex-wives and jilted lovers. In fact, he only has one ex-wife, Diane Salento, and has been married to his second wife, Micheline Roquebrune, since 1975. Roquebrune is an accomplished painter who favors portraiture in bright hues, her gallery available to view on her husband's website. Her long marriage to Connery, though it seemed amicable enough, even despite her taking the fall in their tax fraud scandal, hasn't always been the perfect pairing, however. The man best known for portraying the chauvinistic Bond has had some misogyny problems of his own, including a very public romantic affair with pop star Lindsay DePaul, a woman 18 years his junior. Still, Roquebrune remained with Connery until the end of his life. Perhaps the most distinctive thing about Connery for many filmgoers is his voice, that deep, rolling Scottish brogue. Despite this, he hasn't done a wealth of voice work, limiting such roles to a few special projects. One of those projects was the 2005 video game From Russia with Love, for which he reprised his role as James Bond. Long before that, he played Draco, the computer-generated dragon in Dragonheart. The Last Dragon on Earth, Draco teams up with an erstwhile dragon hunter, a monk, and a young woman on a quest to save England from a tyrannical king. It's a fun, sentimental fantasy adventure, and Connery's Draco holds up surprisingly well. The less said about the franchise that followed, the better. As recently as 2012, Connery came out of retirement to play the title role in the film Sir Billy, an animated film about a Scottish veterinarian that Connery produced. His tone and delivery also make him a natural choice for a narrator, a role he's filled only once for a TV documentary. Other than that, the best way to hear the man is to watch him in the flesh in one of the many, many films he left behind as his legacy.
Actor, comedian, musician, Spider-Man? Donald Glover has many hats, but how much do you really know about this entertainment icon? Keep watching for the untold and surprising truth about Donald Glover. While attending NYU, Donald Glover became a part of Derek Comedy, a sketch comedy group that performed regularly from 2006 to 2010. It was a formative time for internet culture, and the group took full advantage of the new medium, quickly achieving widespread notoriety with their videos. It wasn't long before they racked up a healthy fan base on YouTube, with comedic skits gaining national media attention. Before parting ways completely, Glover joined forces with his sketch comedy crew and released a detective comedy feature called Mystery Team. Derek Comedy member D.C. Pearson told Paste magazine that the film was inspired by the group's collective appreciation of Encyclopedia Brown. In 2010, Pajiba called the film the smart kind of dumb, and with appearances by the likes of Aubrey Plaza and Bobby Moynihan, the comedy's cult status has only grown over time. Donald Glover was still living as an RA in his NYU dorm when SNL alum Tina Fey came calling. His work with Derek Comedy had popped up on her radar, and she actively pursued him to write for her new NBC comedy, 30 Rock. As Fey writes in her memoir, Bossy Pants, because he came from a large family in Georgia, he was very helpful in writing for the character Kenneth the Page. Why did he get this amazing opportunity? Fey admitted to The New Yorker that race was a big factor. She admired Glover's talent, sure, but it was NBC's diversity initiative that made him affordable. Or in other words, free. As Glover told Entertainment Weekly, "It just helped you learn the rules of everything. Tina Fey taught me how to write, but also about the politics of television." In a tribute to Glover for Time magazine's 100 Most Influential issue in 2018, Fey wrote, "He embodies his generation's belief that people can be whatever they want and change what it is they want at any time. When you're tired of starring in a network comedy, take a break to pursue your rap career for a Grammy nomination. When you've learned all you can from acting in other people's movies, sit down and create your own piece of art." Donald Glover was raised a Jehovah's Witness, a religious lifestyle that found him sheltered from much of what pop culture had to offer.
I was always taught like the world was kind of a bad place, so like whenever things came in, I'd be like, yo, this is really dope.
Looking at him now, it's kind of hard to imagine the lack of music, movies, and television in the young Glover's life. But that's not for lack of trying. Glover would listen to bootleg audio of Simpsons episodes in bed at night, once saw The Phantom Menace at the movies, and even managed to get away with catching the odd Muppet movie. This unique upbringing shaped Glover into the multi-talented artist he is today. And, funny enough, his role of Troy Barnes in Community was the first openly Jehovah's Witness character on TV. That one's probably no coincidence. 2008 was an interesting time for television. Not only was the country immersed in a presidential election season, members of the Writers Guild were on strike, causing scripted episodic TV to come to a halt. As the strike came to an end, rumors suggested that Saturday Night Live was looking for a new face to step in as then-Senator Barack Obama. The show auditioned a number of performers for the role, including Jordan Peele, Jordan Carlos, and Donald Glover. It took a few more years for Peele to bring his Obama impersonation to TV with Comedy Central's Key and Peele. Would Glover's Barack impersonation have been worthy of the late-night spotlight? It's possible. In the end, though, Lorne Michaels gave Saturday Night Live cast member Fred Armisen the role. Just 1 year later, Glover made his jump from writer to TV actor with his debut as lovable athlete Troy Barnes on Dan Harmon's cult favorite sitcom, Community.
Good news, guys. I spent all my money.
Boy, you can't bring that in here.
Yes, I can. It's all terrain, dummy.
Glover's breakthrough role was on the NBC sitcom Community, but his time as high school football star turned grade-A weirdo Troy Barnes was often fraught behind the scenes, not the least of which was due to the antics of co-star Chevy Chase. The ex-SNL cast member has long had a reputation for being difficult to work with, and fulfilled expectations by seemingly alienating every member of the Community cast and crew. When it came to Glover, many of Chase's remarks and off-color jokes had a racial edge to them, and perhaps some professional jealousy. Community creator and showrunner Dan Harmon told The New Yorker in 2018, "Chevy was the first to realize how immensely gifted Donald was, and the way he expressed that jealousy was to throw Donald off." Glover and Chase would both leave the show after a troubled fourth season, although Harmon convinced Glover to return for a handful of season 5 episodes. There appears to be no one reason why Glover left Community. Rather, it was a combination of factors, including artistic restlessness, the behind-the-scene turmoil of that previous season, and the development of his FX series, Atlanta. In 2010, Twitter was lit up by a campaign to get Donald Glover cast as Spider-Man. Glover himself started the campaign in a tongue-in-cheek way, and even referenced it by appearing in Spider-Man pajamas on an episode of Community. But the hashtag #DonaldForSpider-Man took on a life of its own. Comic book writer Brian Michael Bendis eventually took notice, and in 2011 he introduced a new Spider-Man to Marvel Comics Ultimates series, Miles Morales, a black and Latino teenager at least partially modeled after Glover. Referring to that episode of Community, Bendis told USA Today, "He looked fantastic. I saw him in the costume and thought, I would like to read that book." Glover missed out the 2012 Sony reboot The Amazing Spider-Man, which used the Peter Parker version of the character, but he did voice Morales in a two-part episode of the animated series Ultimate Spider-Man. In 2017, he made his Marvel Cinematic Universe debut in Spider-Man Homecoming, playing small-time crook Aaron Davis, known in the comics as the Prowler, who also happens to be Miles Morales' uncle. The in-jokes and references get even more twisted around in 2018's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The reality-hopping animated film centers on Miles Morales and includes a cameo of sorts by Glover, as Aaron Davis can be seen watching the episode of Community that featured Glover dressed as Spider-Man. By 2012, Donald Glover had collected an impressive number of accomplishments, especially for someone who'd had their big TV break just a few years prior. With all the work he'd put out into the world by that point, he had shown a proclivity for inducing laughs. And what's the simplest way of doing this? Why, stand-up comedy, of course. In 2010, Glover tested the waters with the half-hour special Comedy Central Presents Donald Glover. It was a time of transition, in between his work on 30 Rock and Community, and the awkwardly energetic aesthetic he cultivated with Derek Comedy was present throughout the performance.
Just something about men, the second they realize they're crazy, it's like, time to kill everything I love! Time to kill it all, it's all coming with me!
He followed up this stint with an hour-long special 2 years later, titled Donald Glover Weirdo. By this point, though, he had begun releasing music under the Childish Gambino moniker. While joke-telling could have remained fruitful, hip-hop was calling, and it proved to be an even more worthwhile venture. When Donald Glover started making mixtapes, he released them under the rap name Childish Gambino. It's a colorful moniker, to be sure, but what does it mean? Glover explained on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon that he acquired the name from a Wu-Tang Clan name generator. He said,
and then we're all putting them in and they're all funny and stuff, and then mine came up and I was like, you guys, it's not funny anymore. This is something big. Like, I just really liked it.
But what does it actually mean? In a 2011 Fuse interview, Glover recalled a conversation he had with Wu-Tang's RZA, who apparently had some valuable insight. He's like, yo, it's like the computer had a brain. It's like you're childish, but you could also murder someone. Glover was quick to point out that he wouldn't ever kill anybody, instead summing it all up by saying,
for me, it's kind of just like silliness and kind of seriousness.
His name may signify a blend of silliness and seriousness, but Childish Gambino explored a deeper level of artistry with 2016's Awaken My Love, as Rolling Stone argued in their review of the Grammy-winning album. Gambino delves into the kind of grungy stank love that Outkast once indulged in on their magnum opuses. As Gambino's music has continued to mature, Donald Glover's live performances have evolved as well. It all culminated in Pharos, a live immersive music festival that Glover devised with Microsoft. The 4-day event that transpired in Joshua Tree, California was crafted for a small group of people and featured performances by a number of other musicians, including Glover's longtime collaborator Ludwig Göransson. As Glover told Vanity Fair, Pharos is meant to be a communal space, a place that evolves and reacts to the culture. We're selling real intimacy. We protect the experience and it becomes something you genuinely share with the people around you and you take away something special. We're looking at expanding the world in 2018. There will be more artists involved. Sure enough, another Pharos event took place in New Zealand in November 2018. What the future holds for Glover's mini festival, however, remains to be seen. Up until 2014, Donald Glover was pretty active on social media. He regularly shared humorous thoughts and quips on Twitter, and even stirred up rumors about his mental well-being after a series of posts on Instagram. Glover explained his dark Instagram admissions by saying, "I just wanted to write down my feelings. I definitely was just expressing myself." Not long after, Glover drastically limited his social media usage. He later told The New Yorker, "I felt like social media was making me less human, and I already didn't feel that human." Expanding on his issue with the internet, citing the lack of personal connectivity, Glover admitted to Esquire that he largely uses social media anonymously. He said, "I try and find subcultures. I try and find communities. I talk to people as a regular person. It's the only place you can be anonymous." Curious why Donald Glover has a mention in the end credits of Black Panther? It turns out that he and his brother Steven stepped in to help punch up some jokes in director Ryan Coogler's script. Glover told Entertainment Tonight, Ryan was gracious enough to be like, "Will you take a look at this script?" Which was really cool. Marvel locks things down, so we had not as much time as I would have wanted. They had already done a great job, so it was really cool to just get our fingerprints on there a bit. Glover has been known to add some comedy consulting when time allows it. Take Chance the Rapper, for example. Not only have they worked on music together, but Glover gave the rapper some sketch writing assistance when he hosted SNL in November of 2017.
So I brought a few sketches by. One of them made it. I actually got to give credit to my good friend Donald Glover, who helped me with the idea.
Glover's explanation of the vibe of Atlanta to the Television Critics Association in 2016 was as succinct as it was difficult to picture. I just wanted to make Twin Peaks with rappers. Twin Peaks, the surreal David Lynch television series whose central murder mystery made it an unlikely hit in its first season, seemed like an odd comparison at the time. In fact, everyone expected a comedy more along the lines of what Glover was doing on Community. What Glover and his collaborators delivered instead is a comedy in name only, or one that often substitutes unease and dread for belly laughs. Glover stars as Earn, an aimless man who has fallen into managing the career of his cousin Alfred, a mid-level Atlanta rapper known as Paperboy. The show is frequently hilarious, but what Glover shares with David Lynch is a sense of the uncanny and the sinister lurking in everyday life. For Lynch, that everyday life is the white picket fences of Blue Velvet or the quirky logging town of Twin Peaks. For Glover, it's the already surreal world of black life in America. And like fellow comedian turned horror maestro Jordan Peele, Glover understands how little it takes to tweak the daily struggles of black Americans into something bizarre and terrifying. Atlanta is nominally a comedy, and there's a fair share of humor featured throughout the series, but the subject matter goes much deeper. Stylistically, there's nothing else like it on television. Chalk that up to the partnership between Donald Glover and director Hiro Murai, who developed their working relationship during multiple Childish Gambino music video shoots. Together, they have collaborated to make Atlanta the Emmy-winning force it is today. Not many people know, though, that the show's aesthetic comes from a short film that Murai and Glover made in 2013. As Murai told Esquire, much of the show's DNA came from a 2013 movie called Clapping for the Wrong Reasons. This is a short that he and Glover made about a rap star moving from room to room in his mansion, drifting among the friends and possessions he'd collected. Film School Rejects commented on the style of the film, writing, "Compared to the high concepts of some of Murai's music videos, it feels downbeat and almost like an LA version of mumblecore, micro-budget movies about creatives aimlessly searching for themselves."
You hate women. What?
As if all of Donald Glover's accomplishments weren't enough, he also made Emmys history when he received 2 accolades for his work on Atlanta: Outstanding Directing for a Comedy Series, as well as Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. Glover became the first black director to win in the comedy category. Understandably, it was all a bit overwhelming.
I blacked out. I don't know. Blacked out. Yeah, like I was not ready for that.
He explained further, saying he was in a weird phase when he directed Ban, the episode for which he won his Emmy.
I was doing a lot.
Okay.
I was like a new father. I was writing other episodes and directing and like cobbling this together.
He went on to say, "I'm really astonished. I was really shocked." One of the most bizarre and disturbing episodes of Atlanta was Season 2's Teddy Perkins. In this episode, Earn and Alfred's stoner philosopher friend Darius shows up to a large house outside the city to pick up a free piano. There he encounters Teddy Perkins, a reclusive, light-skinned, face-lifted former songwriter who is also played by Glover. Teddy insists on giving Darius a tour of the house, which doubles as a museum dedicated to himself and his brother who lives in the attic. Suffice to say, things get very creepy very quickly. This is the furthest Atlanta has tipped into outright horror, at least in its first 3 seasons. It was made all the more unsettling when Glover brought his terrifying creation into the real world, apparently dressing as Teddy Perkins at the 2018 Emmy Awards when he was nominated for Best Actor in a Comedy Series. The word apparently is important here, because later in the evening, Glover and Teddy Perkins were somehow photographed together. So, who was sitting in Glover's seat? Internet sleuths scoured the possibilities for months. An E! News report at the time quoted a source claiming that the person under the makeup was former SNL cast member Jay Pharoah, which Pharoah all but confirmed in a 2021 video interview with Condé Nast Traveler.
Had to be somebody under there, right? Had to be somebody. 3 hours of makeup.
In 2018, Childish Gambino released This Is America. The song and its accompanying Hiro Murai directed video was an immediate viral hit. It launched 1,000 think pieces, scouring its every lyric and image for meaning. Mirai presents the bulk of the video as a single take, following Glover through an empty warehouse, alternating between moments of joy to moments of shocking violence. Likewise, the music crashes buoyant, Caribbean-inspired rhythms up against the haunting drone of its chorus. Glover performed the song when he hosted Saturday Night Live that year, and a version of it also appeared in Glover's 2019 short film Guava Island. It also became the first rap song to ever win Song of the Year at the Grammys. Glover's work elicited a number of negative reactions as well, with some taking issue with what they saw as his exploiting black trauma and violence under the guise of making art. He's also been accused of plagiarism on more than one occasion. In 2018, fans noted the similarities between This Is America and rapper Jace Harley's 2016 song American Pharaoh. Harley declined to take legal action, apparently grateful just to be part of the conversation. In 2021, however, the rapper Kid West filed a suit against Glover on behalf of his own 2016 song Made in America. Glover maintains that This Is America predates both Harley and Kid West's tracks. Season 3 of Atlanta premiered in March 2022 after a 4-year hiatus. During that time, one of Glover's most high-profile gigs was the 2019 live-action remake of Disney's The Lion King. Director Jon Favreau and an army of visual effects artists crafted a new version of the classic 1994 animated film in photorealistic CGI, but crucially retained the original film's award-winning songs. This meant that Glover, playing Simba, had to sing the well-known duet Can You Feel the Love Tonight with Nala, played in the remake by Beyoncé Knowles Carter. Glover was in London filming Solo, a Star Wars story at the time, so he recorded his vocals separately, which, as he joked on Jimmy Kimmel Live, was probably a good thing for him.
I did not want to be looking into Beyoncé's eyes while doing this.
Despite being an acclaimed recording artist in his own right, having to match pipes with Beyoncé in the same room would be a pretty nerve-wracking thing. In the segment, Kimmel suggests that it was probably less intimidating to record separately. Glover agrees.
I imagine it's less intimidating playing basketball with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
If you're at home just throwing.
He was written into The Big Lebowski without his knowledge, and he's officially in the Mustache Hall of Fame. Keep watching for so much more about the untold truth of Sam Elliott. Born in 1944 in Sacramento, California, Sam Elliott began acting in the late 60s. He did what a lot of actors before him had done. He started out in small roles in television westerns, eventually earning slightly more substantial parts in the hit shows Lancer and Mission Impossible. His first role in a major film came in 1969's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which featured the superstar leads Paul Newman and Robert Redford in the title roles. A comedic western based on the lives of two notorious bank-robbing outlaws, the film seems like a perfect fit for Elliott, who spent much of his career working within the genre. Unfortunately for him, he had a blink-and-you'll-miss-it parts as a card player. He didn't even have any lines. While the role didn't have much of an impact on his career, the movie did have a rather coincidental place in his life. Starring beside Newman and Redford was Catherine Ross, and though she and Elliott shared no scenes and didn't cross paths during filming, nearly 10 years later they did meet again and started dating as co-leads in The Legacy. It wasn't long before the couple were married. Today they're still together and they have a daughter. Over the course of the 1970s and 1980s, Sam Elliott never quite hit it big, but he did enjoy increasing recognition as a character actor appearing in television shows, TV movies, and big screen productions. His first major starring role in a feature film came in 1976's Lifeguard, which tells the tale of a lifeguard working in Southern California who's forced into self-reflection after attending a high school reunion and realizing that his classmates have accomplished greater things with their lives. While the movie performed decently in the box office, Elliott publicly complained about the film's marketing during the promotional tour, which caused the studio heads at Paramount to become displeased. As a result, he never worked with the company again. That wasn't the only trouble he experienced during this period. During an interview in 1980, Elliott revealed that he had been propositioned repeatedly during auditions, saying, "You cannot believe the casting couch stories I could tell you, man. The cliches are all true. I've had propositions from men and women and I've turned them all down. It's probably hurt me, but I'm the one who has to live with that guilt. My conscience is clear, even though my career is still not setting the world on fire." Perhaps unsurprisingly, he later became a vocal supporter of the Me Too movement. However, these decades weren't all hard times, as he scored a number of high-profile roles. In 1985, he starred in a supporting role alongside Cher in Mask. Then in 1989, he starred next to Patrick Swayze in the cult classic Roadhouse. By the time the 1990s rolled around, Sam Elliott had spent more than 20 years in Hollywood, but he still didn't have much in the way of name recognition. For the most part, he seemed destined to forever be a somewhat acknowledged face without a name. With the arrival of his third decade in the business, however, that was about to change. After playing a substantial part in the critically acclaimed Civil War epic Gettysburg, Elliott starred alongside Kurt Russell in the now classic western Tombstone, which was hailed by audiences and critics alike. In the role of Virgil Earp, from the famous real-life Old West family of lawmen headed by the renowned Wyatt Earp, Elliott was particularly captivating. This helped to propel him into prominent parts in future films. Sadly enough, Elliott's father, who never wanted him to become an actor, didn't get a chance to see his success begin. The two sparred over the career choice and were never able to settle their differences, as his father died of a heart attack when Elliott was just 18. Many years later, while speaking in an interview with The Star, Elliott explained, "He died thinking, man, this kid is going to go down the wrong path. And I think on some levels that was either hard on me or made me more focused in my resolve to have a career, you know what I mean?" These days, The Big Lebowski is almost universally considered one of the Cohen brothers' greatest films, and one of its many iconic characters is Elliott's the Stranger, a surreal narrator who delivers some of the movie's most quotable lines.
Darkness washed over the dude, darker than a black steer's tuchus on a moonless prairie night.
According to an interview in the New York Times, Elliott was initially disappointed at being cast as yet another cowboy. That was until he read the script. Speaking to NPR, Elliott explained that as he looked through the screenplay, he spotted a surprise. As he explained it, over the dialogue, there's this tumbling tumbleweed blowing and talk about this Southwest accent and sounding not unlike Sam Elliott. They had my name in the script. Later, as they were filming his final scene, Elliott became exasperated by going through take after take. The Cohen brothers finally admitted that they had already gotten what they wanted, but they enjoyed watching and listening to him so much that they had him do it again and again.
Well, that about does her. Wraps her all up.
Part of what helped propel Sam Elliott to success was his distinctive voice, and over the years, he's lent it to a wide variety of high-profile commercials. Perhaps the most notable products you might have heard his familiar voice hawking are Coors Beer and Dodge Ram heavy-duty trucks. Since 2008, Elliott has also voiced Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service mascot created to help with wildfire prevention efforts. You probably have heard his catchphrase.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Another fun fact, Elliott not only delivers Smokey's famous catchphrase, but he actually shares his birth date with the fictional spokesbear, August 9, 1944. While Sam Elliott's star has been rising steadily for some 20 years or so, in the 2010s he really took off. By the middle of the decade, he had recurring roles in the Netflix series The Ranch and Grace and Frankie. He also lent his voice to the 2015 animated film The Good Dinosaur. Then in 2017, Elliott starred in The Hero, a film about an aging Western star whose best days are behind him. Not only was it the perfect role for him, but according to the film's writer and director Brett Haley, it was literally written for Elliott. As Haley explained to the LA Times, "To me, it was a love letter not only to Sam, but to a dying breed of actor in film and Hollywood." Shortly after that, Elliott starred in the flat-out bizarre B film The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, which fared well with critics thanks largely to Elliott's performance. In 2018, Sam Elliott hit another major high point in his career so far with his performance in A Star Is Born. Directed by Bradley Cooper and starring Cooper, Elliott, and Lady Gaga, the movie is about the relationship between an up-and-coming singer and her alcoholic mentor. A Star Is Born was a massive success by every measure, earning $436 million on a $36 million budget. It garnered almost universal praise from the critics and scored 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, 1 win for Best Original Song, and 1 nomination for Best Supporting Actor for Sam Elliott. Shockingly, this was his first Academy Award nomination, indicating that even at 75 years old, his career still had exciting places to go. Elliott's performance in the film also earned him a nomination for Outstanding Performance by a Male Actor in a Supporting Role at the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and a win for Best Supporting Actor at the National Board of Review Awards. Not bad for an old cowboy. Along with his smooth, deep voice and tough demeanor, Sam Elliott is best recognized by his iconic mustache, and we're not the only ones who think so. In 2015, Elliott was inducted into the Mustache Hall of Fame, alongside the likes of real-life legends such as Teddy Roosevelt, Hulk Hogan, and Billy D. Williams, as well as fictional characters such as Ned Flanders and Yosemite Sam. Talk about a distinguished class of facial hair. While we all know and love his superior upper lip sweater, Elliott himself doesn't quite understand all the fuss. Sam Elliott might not get all the attention, but we totally do. That's some ferocious facial fuzz he's got there. Of course, these days, Sam Elliott is among the most recognizable faces in the industry as he continues to shine on screens big and small. His latest breakout hit is 1883 on Paramount+, a prequel to the series Yellowstone. Keanu Reeves hit Hollywood like a cool breeze in the 80s. That's what his name means in Hawaiian. And ever since, he's been one of cinema's most intriguing and versatile actors. But is his poetry any good? Was Alice Cooper really his babysitter? Here's the untold truth of Keanu Reeves. When Reeves went to The Late Show in December 2021 to promote his return as Neo in The Matrix Resurrections, Stephen Colbert took upon himself to divert the conversation a bit and ask him about Sad Keanu, an immensely popular meme based on a 2010 picture of Reeves sullenly eating a sandwich on a bench. Reeves explained his state of mind at the time of the iconic meal.
I was thinking. I had some stuff going on. Sure. I was hungry.
Like any of us, Reeves was just trying to fill his stomach and ponder the complexities of life while doing so, but he inadvertently provided the internet with one of the most viral memes of all time. Back in 2011, when the meme was still pretty fresh, he told BBC how he really feels about it.
Do I wish that I didn't get my picture taken and while I was eating a sandwich on the streets of New York? Yeah.
Living is something that Keanu Reeves has been doing for a long time. The actor was born in 1964, but some people on the internet have come to believe that Reeves is a whole lot older than 57. In 2010, a Reddit poster noted that there is a striking resemblance between Reeves and portraits of Paul Mounet, a French actor who died in the early 20th century but whose body was never found. Not long after the post began drawing attention, someone made a small addition to Mounet's Wikipedia page, writing, "He currently acts under the pseudonym of Keanu Reeves. The source of his eternal youth is not known." The addition went unchanged for several weeks, and Reeves' immortality conspiracy was born. It didn't take long for the official Keanu Reeves' Immortal website to enter the scene. The site features pictures of Reeves throughout the years, and he does appear to age at about the same rate as Paul Rudd. In addition to Mounet, Reeves is also confirmed to have been King Charlemagne, who lived from 748 to 814 and crowned his son as king shortly before dying and undergoing a rushed winter burial. It's a small world, after all. Keanu Reeves might have played in Dog Star through the 90s, but his connection to rock and roll goes back way further than that. In an interview with Jimmy Fallon, Reeves confirmed that Alice Cooper used to babysit him as a kid. Reeves explained that he grew up in Toronto, just down the street from a recording studio called Nimbus 9. Reeves' mother was a costume designer who often worked with musicians, and she happened to have a connection with Alice Cooper. Reeves confessed that he doesn't actually remember spending any time with the rock legend. He said,
That's so rad.
I mean, I don't know how that could actually possibly happen, but it did, supposedly.
Yeah.
The only part of the experience that Reeves can recall is a prank that Cooper pulled. He recounted,
I remember that that there was fake poo in the fridge.
Of course, actors and rock stars cross paths all the time, but it's not often that their encounters lead to a story this delightful. Everyone has to start somewhere, and Keanu Reeves got a start in the movie business, partially against his will, when he was still just a teenager. Reeves' stepfather, Paul Aaron, was working on his second feature film the summer that Reeves turned 15. Reeves told The Guardian, "It was my summer holiday from school, and for a parent, it's like, what do you do with this kid over the summer? I know, we'll make him a production assistant on a movie." A Force of One starring Chuck Norris wasn't the most auspicious start to a film career, but the job got Reeves invested in the magic of making movies. Reeves said, "I was watching the grips, I was watching actors, I was seeing how a film set really works." He spent weeks learning the ins and outs of a film set, but mostly he fetched buckets of ice to keep the drinks and snacks cool. Still, he learned his most important lesson about filmmaking on that set. He said, "A movie is all hands on deck. I love all hands on deck." That love has never left Reeves, and neither has his work ethic. During the production of John Wick 4, Reeves blew up online yet again when someone caught footage of him lugging heavy equipment around like another crew member. 42 years later, Reeves is just as hardworking as ever. In one of Keanu Reeves' earliest roles, he plays a hardworking cyclist who powers through a long race and gets rewarded with a cool glass bottle of Coca-Cola.
Hey, I'm proud of you, really proud. A Coke.
Reeves reminisced about the role on The Late Late Show with James Corden, and the memories brought a wide smile to his face. The 3-day commercial shoot was one of Reeves' first tastes of being a working actor, and all these years later, he can still enthusiastically recall the excitement and camaraderie that he felt on the set. With Reeves' reputation for being one of the most hard-working actors in Hollywood, it will probably surprise no one that he shaved his legs for the role. There aren't many actors, even at the beginning of their careers, who would go that far for a minute-long Coke commercial. Because of his starring roles in major Hollywood blockbusters, people often think of Keanu Reeves as an American movie star, but that couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, Reeves was more of an international man of mystery. Reeves was born in Lebanon after his parents, English-born Patricia and Chinese-Hawaiian Samuel, met on a beach in Beirut. Shortly after Reeves' birth, the family moved to Australia, and not long after that, his parents separated. Ultimately, Patricia relocated the family to New York for a brief stint before settling in Toronto. Reeves has been a Canadian citizen for most of his life, life, though his frequent trips to Los Angeles and other parts of the world obscure that fact for most of his fans. When he was asked in an interview why he keeps his Canadian citizenship despite spending so much of his time in the United States, he said, "I sometimes wonder. I've even regretted not having American citizenship, especially at election times." Though Reeves clarified that he isn't an activist, he does have a strong belief that elections are important. He said, "Ideally, I would take out dual nationality. Dual citizenship might be Reeves' preference, but with over 100 acting roles in under 40 years, he's hardly had the time to enjoy his Canadian citizenship, much less seek out another country's." When a famous actor pivots into writing a book or a series of poems, the results are usually mixed at best. Keanu Reeves used the stereotype to his advantage with his first poetry book, Ode to Happiness, which was published in 2011. Each page contains a single line from Reeves paired with an illustration from his girlfriend, artist Alexandra Grant. Grant told the BBC that Ode to Happiness began its life as a joke. She said, "Our friend sat at Keanu's house one night listening to wonderfully sad, self-pitying songs, and Keanu, in the spirit of poking fun at them, began to write a poem. The book begins with the line, 'I draw a hot sorrow bath in my despair rooms.' It then continues on in that self-serious vein for the duration." Reeves is the first to acknowledge that the overwrought style of the poem isn't meant to be taken seriously. Reeves told BBC, "It's only personal in the sense of looking out and regarding my sense of humor. I don't usually take baths in my despair room with a misery candle burning." The collaboration was so successful that it led to a second book in 2016. Shadows once again pairs poetry with art, but this time the coupling isn't so humorous. Reeves told The Guardian that the book was an attempt to, quote, "contextualize the grief that he's faced in his life." He hoped that by writing about the grief he could, quote, "even be inspired by it, even find a certain pleasure in it." As it turns out, poetry just wasn't enough to satisfy Reeves' seemingly bottomless artistic drive. In the fall of 2017, he sat down with Boom Studios to talk about a character and story idea that had been lingering in his mind for ages. The meeting was the most Keanu-esque pitch imaginable. He acted out various scenes from the story, which follows an immortal, hyper-violent man constantly engaged in combat, and showed off his decades of fighting knowledge. Reeves said, "It went comic book." I went, "Yeah, why not?" And with that, Berserker was born. Reeves paired up with veteran comic writer Matt Kind, the mind behind Mind Management, to bring his story to fruition. The comic features an 80,000-year-old man who, in Keanu's words, could punch people's chests and their backs and rip people's arms off to life. The story was planned as a 12-issue miniseries, and Boom launched a Kickstarter campaign to gauge interest in the story. The studio ended up with $1.5 million in pre-orders. The wildly successful comic is already being considered for a film adaptation, and Reeves has stated that he would love to play the role. The project still needs to find its perfect director, but it likely won't be long before Berserker hits the big screen. Though it wasn't his first time fighting his way through scenes and set pieces, Keanu Reeves became known as an action movie star after The Matrix.
I know Kung Fu. Show me.
The film came out more than 20 years ago, but as he's gotten older, Reeves has continually upped the ante. The John Wick films, directed by Reeves' Matrix stunt double Chad Stahelski, are filled with the type of visceral action that usually relies on camera tricks and highly trained martial artists. However, Reeves famously prefers to handle the material himself. He told Sunday Today, "I do all of the action. I'm 90% of what's happening there." He says that doing action scenes in his 50s is more about recovery than when he was younger, but if anything, he's gotten better with time. Reeves doesn't constrain his action prowess to a single franchise either. He shot some pretty incredible stunts for his return to The Matrix and The Matrix Resurrections. Reeves told Stephen Colbert on The Late Show that he and Carrie-Anne Moss jumped off a 46-story building 19 to 20 times to nail down the perfect shot. When asked why he didn't use CGI for the jump, Reeves said, "Because it's Lana Wachowski and it's The Matrix, and you need natural light and you want to do it real." That's a dedication of someone who shaved their legs for a commercial, growing stronger with each new opportunity. After all the time that Keanu Reeves has spent in front of the camera, it seems only appropriate that he's gotten an opportunity to sit in the director's chair. 2013's Man of Tai Chi stars Tiger Hu Chin as a young martial artist who gets in too deep in an underground fighting ring. Reeves not only directed the film, but also stretched his acting range by starring as the film's main antagonist. The film wasn't nearly as groundbreaking as previous Reeves outings, but the critical consensus on Rotten Tomatoes calls it an agreeably old-fashioned picture for martial arts fans, and a solid debut for first-time director Keanu Reeves. Reeves hasn't directed a second film, but that doesn't mean he won't. Berserker writer Matt Kind has thrown Reeves' name into the hat for directing the comic's film adaptation, telling the Washington Post, "There's no one better to pull it off than him." Keanu Reeves has acted in more movies than most people even aspire to, but don't let that trick you into thinking that he's going to disappear from the big screen anytime soon. Reeves told The Guardian, "Around the time I hit 40, there was this idea of creating more from my artistic loins." He said that he often thinks about life like it's a reel of tape. When you're young, you have a big old reel of that tape left, right? And so it appears to revolve slowly. Then time passes and there's less and less tape left on the reel. It spins faster, it spins faster. These days, Reeves is trying to move just as fast as his spinning tape. He's revisiting old franchises like The Matrix and Bill and Ted while continuing to push forward on more recent hits. Notably, there are currently 2 John Wick sequels in production. At the same time, he's releasing poetry, showing up in video games, and spending time with the people closest to him. He said, "Work doesn't slow time down. If anything, it speeds everything up." Luckily for us, Reeves still has plenty of tape left on his reel.